Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So, a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Rod, Todd Wazzle, Jason Hornsby, Christoph Fournier, John Travolta, J Melds 24, Unimento, M, Iron26, Endless, Flat Earth Sage, Goldie McKinnon, Retro Bill, More Books, Cannabear, Bogey, Michael Kármán, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Mel B. Styles, Troy Shuker, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Rob W, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Abraham Mohammed, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, David Wayne Foster, and Dank. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
Run for the stores. The best advice that I can give each and every one of you guys is to not go towards any of those stores and just go towards your local zoo. Your local zoo is going to be overlooked, but it's going to be flooded with antibiotics, antivenoms, all sorts of pharmaceuticals, all sorts of surgical equipment. It's going to have tons of fresh frozen meat on hand for all the carnivores. It's going to have tons of fresh vegetables on hand. It's going to have a lot of natural biodiverse environments as well. Be a good place to lay low for about 6 months or so before people really start scavenging around.
Mic check.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello. What up, Neil? No, I'm kidding. What's up, guys?
Not
Morning
to change the
to
subject, but John, what do you
and all
think
the
about
folks.
my son?
What the local floods that happen everywhere?
Yeah, he thinks that the flood, the biblical flood, only happened in that, I guess, Macedonia area. So in other words, it didn't happen over here. It didn't happen in, let's say, China.
Well, there is evidence that it didn't happen in China, but they not at the same time. But they had their own in areas. There is evidence of that. Historical
Yeah,
record. I
it's
guess you
the
could
whole
say.
idea of,
Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say the whole idea of localized floods that covered mountains is silly. I hope anybody that asserts that realizes how silly that sounds.
No, they don't. It's a fad that's still live and kicking on the internet.
I guess water, it's not water at rest, so it's whatever, you know.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Tenth. What's your take on that? He had his two uncles going bananas, but I'm not biting into his nonsense anymore. I just
Well,
ignore it.
If I saw two uncles going bananas, I'd run. Nathan, you got a video today?
He thought the conversation was going to go, so we got a coffee.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a silly thing. Yep.
Yeah, he had but listen, Tenth, we took him to scripture. We had him read it himself. Oh God, everywhere was flooded. Everything died that walked on earth. And then he turns around and goes, yeah, but where's the historical proof and where's the geological proof? It doesn't have it anywhere but in that.
Yeah, it does. No,
I know.
You got seashells on mountaintops across the world. How did they get there? Right. You got it in the strata. You got it everywhere. My goodness.
Hint.
And plus what John said, what John said makes the most sense. How does water behave?
That is localized flooding that covered mountains. Yeah.
Yeah, doesn't make any sense.
But I mean, yeah.
Mic check, mic check.
Yeah, we hear you, G. Nathan, you back? Some coffee he's getting.
Well, yeah, he was like, well, they're talking about the Bible. I'll have a good 5 or 10 minutes of good conversation, so I should be able to run off real quick, do what I got to do, and come back.
You think that sounds about right?
Never mind, daylight savings already makes everything go crazy.
Yo, let me tell you something about that daylight saving. That just confuses the heck out of me. And it makes it worse now that I'm in Central Time and now I'm an hour behind everything anyway.
Shout out to Blue Ridge Ranger for joining as a penguin.
Oh, you're back.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Do you have a video lined up, Nathan?
Well, you've given me Neil deGrasse Tyson to cover, and as much as I love covering Neil deGrasse Tyson, we've done a lot of him in the last month, like probably 4 or 5.
Yeah, well, you want the big folks. You want the little babies? I can get you a bunch of little babies, but here's a big folk saying he knows the edge of the earth.
Well, I want to hear that.
Okay.
No, I want to admit you a kaku.
I mean,
yeah, but those videos are like 49 minutes to an hour, 10 minutes long.
I don't mind covering Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's not that I mind covering him. It's just it just gets a bit samey if we're always covering Neil deGrasse Tyson. That's all.
All right.
Well, here's the problem, Nathan. I could get you others, but they're like 2 hour, 1 hour and a half, 45-minute videos. You're not going to. This will take you a month to go through that.
Right. So Neil deGrasse Tyson just happens to be victim of his own concise nature in the regards that he can put together a video that's less than 15 minutes long. I see. Okay. No, I mean, like I say, I don't mind covering Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's just it just does get a little bit samey.
The situation is I would have to go listen to a 2-hour video, cut out a 10-minute segment, and then they'll say you took it out of context.
Speaking of Mr. Tyson, and I'm pretty sure you guys knew before me, I just found out by watching Flatzoid's perspective. I hear that Tyson and his crew, they're changing up and dismissing the Big Bang Theory. Is that something that we could probably catch him talking on Star Talk? Because that's supposed to be the new heliocentric thing. It's not like Newtonian got knocked out by Einsteinian. Now they got the Big Bang Theory considered to be a dismissal of their concept. So. And also, shout out to Flataholics Anonymous. I'm looking forward to you coming on Discord with your proof that you were yapping your mouth about on the chat on the premiere yesterday. We look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, he said he'd come.
Oh yeah, I love globe proofs. They're like the best thing ever. They usually end up needing flat Earth, you know.
Oh gosh.
Hey, D-Rose, just
What's up?
to you, huh? You leave the chat alone. It'll drive you insane. I went through it. I'm trying to help you.
I know you told me. It's fun sometimes. Hey, call me the ad homie. I'm your ad homie. You know what I'm saying? I just basically like, I mean, I only get on one person. Duper Poons, the Pooper Scooper, and that guy right there. That guy right there actually approached me about something that I responded to one of our fellow flat earth proponents. And then he said, are you sure about that? So I said, no, so then that's when I went on him, you know what I'm saying? But then he started opening up Pandora's box. So I said, okay, now you've opened up the door for me to go for you. And now he's caught. He's got to present it because he's the one that came with the assertions. I made no assertions. All I did is, concur with somebody and he tried to go at us. So he set himself up for failure.
Duper Poons and Pooper Scooper. You gotta be kidding me.
That's his name. It's Duper Poons in parentheses, not a Pooper Scooper. However, he's a proud professional Pooper Scooper.
Listen,
that's his whole avatar.
More power to you. If you get him in here, that's fine. But all they're gonna do is just talk from that little chat area. That's their whole main purpose in life.
Yep. I know that. I know that. But still, you always got to invite them to the party. You know, invite them to the party so they don't think we're rude. And, yeah,
we're friendly.
That
here.
thing you said about
we're friendly hippos, John.
yeah, right. They're denying their own creation story now. Is that what you said?
Yes.
It doesn't matter.
Flat Soy Perspective had a thing yesterday, a live yesterday, and he said that this is what's going on in the community of heliocentrism, is that these so-called astrophysicists, he didn't say a rumor, he said now he has found out that they are now using another method because, and you know why? Because we are so in their behinds that they have to. The same way the reason why they couldn't go with the Newton, it was getting dismissed. So they had to throw Einstein, who threw some philosophical, magical conjecture of his own out of his head after popping mushrooms. But now they're throwing the Big Bang out because people are not falling for it anymore. And it's, like they're not falling for the...
Hey, you said they're not falling for it, but yet there's a report from the U.S. Pentagon that there's a mothership in the solar system responsible for all these sightings.
That has nothing to do. That has nothing to do with the Big Bang Theory, though. They're still sticking to space. They're just saying creation was not by the Big Bang Theory. They're changing that up. They won't accept creation. They're going to say that it wasn't the Big Bang Theory that made us exist, and the time span is now shorter than what they assumed it was, according to their studies.
While it might be frustrating for us, right, it means absolutely nothing. Right, humanity is such that they will believe whatever they are told to believe. Now, it might have a period of time between one story and another being completely 180 degrees in opposition to it. So if you look at, let's say, the 70s, if you were talking about UFOs, you were a nutter, you were a kook, you were finding yourself in the back pages of the tabloids being laughed at. Yeah? Same goes for Bigfoot, as it came up recently. Yeah? The 70s opinion of someone who thought that they'd seen a UFO or been abducted by aliens was the same sort of attitude people have today towards people who think they've seen Bigfoot. Would you not agree? Well, fast forward a few years, here we are, there's a mothership. Well, the people will buy it because they've seen it on the people will buy it because they've seen it on the news. The news tells them there's a UFO. Then there's a UFO. That's accepted by the nation. They've been indoctrinated with enough space stuff between the 50s and now for them to wholeheartedly accept anything that's told to them about that region that they've never been and can't visit and is in violation of a law of nature. But if they're told on the news that that's what's happening, they'll believe it.
Yeah, but you say in the 70s.
Hold on.
One second. You say in the 70s. I disagree. In the 70s is when they had all of them alien visitations. You had the Barney and Betty Hill story. You had the Bigfoot documentary movie that was out in the 70s. So I think your timeline might be a little off.
Well, hold on a sec before we gloss past the Big Bang story, because it's not a theory, was created in response to the second law of thermodynamics. It was specifically in response to that because they had to deal with the beginning. So what are they saying now if they're denying a beginning?
What happened to Neil? Neil was talking about the 70s, and he went robotic voice, and then everything got blank. Were y'all still talking?
Yeah, we were still talking. It's just John had a crappy connection. But yeah.
No, John, it's entropy law, right? So now what they're doing is they're just kicking a can down the road. Am I right, Nathan?
I can only imagine. I don't know the story, but yes, I would imagine they're kicking the can down the road. Yes.
How do you kick the can at the beginning?
Do you want me to have a go? I would say something along the lines of, instead of there being a point of origin where everything came from, the original point of origin is what we consider to be like 1 microsecond after that. So the origin is the start with a big ball. Probably involves a ball. There you go. How's that?
That is the Big Bang.
Yeah, but just imagine you haven't got the very, very first bit.
They don't.
No, I know. But if you eradicate that from the story, then it all makes sense then, right?
Yeah, that's what they did. But I mean, that's what's now. If they're getting rid of that, what's left?
Exactly the same. So imagine if they've gotten rid of it and replaced it with exactly the same thing. I'm guessing that's what we'll get. So imagine like when they got rid of gravity and then we recovered Veritasium recently. At his midpoint conclusion, he's saying all things fair towards the ground. Yeah? So it's like meet the old boss, same as the old boss?
Yeah, what Nathan's saying is doesn't matter. They can say whatever they want. It's still the same.
Yeah.
They just take something away. That's all.
Yeah, add something here, take something away there. It'll generally be roughly the same story. They're not going to radically change it, but there will be one aspect that's fundamental to their premise in their story, and they're begging the question fallacy of the Big Bang. But we'll find objection within the story, or just say it violates the first law, or point people in the direction of the ontological primitives. And they'll just ignore us, because they won't want to believe for 1 second that Big Brother, Big Daddy government is going to lie to them in any way. So, you know, this is all kind of mood. I'm in one of those moods.
Right, but when you kick the can down the road, you can only kick the can down the road to the end of the road. That's how that works.
Yeah.
You know, it has a...
John, you mean you may need to drop and rejoin?
Yeah, but you've only got to kick it down the road for a couple of 3 generations, right? That's all it takes. As long as you can keep the story hanging on by a thread for that long, then when you make the radical change, people have been softened up to whatever it is. Yeah, 2 or 3 generations of sloppy storytelling is fine for most aspects of the heliocentric narrative.
I just don't see how you can get rid of the beginning in their story and still have a story.
Neil, what's the new story? Do you know? Or D Rose?
I know what it's
He
going
did not
to be.
elaborate on what he didn't elaborate on what the news story was, but he pretty much made it. It made it implicit that it was in the working. He didn't get any further into detail or said he found out, but he did say that they actually did backtrack.
I know what it might
digress. They digressed on the Big Bang, basically. They're kind of like being more passive aggressive, digressing on it. You know what I mean? Like not pushing it as their creation model now.
I know what I know what it might be. It's just like Newton says, don't ascribe gravity to me. And then he dies, and then they ascribe it to him. And then they say, well, this ain't working. So in 1915, they say, forget that. It's going to be 4D space. Now we've been doing a bunch of reviews on how gravity's not real, and everything about space and time might not be real because they're doubting that narrative. So what's the next narrative? Well, now we hear possibly, because I haven't seen the information, they're getting rid of the Big Bang. Okay, they're going to replace it with something. And the way the headlines are going and all these UFO sightings, aliens created everything, and there are gods.
There you go. So that's how it's going
There you go.
kick down the road.
Exactly.
So there'll be an alien species that made us. And if someone ever gets to the point that it's an infinite regress fallacy, they'll point out, hopefully, that where did the aliens come from on another planet? Well, they were created by the other aliens. And so they can kick that can down the road indefinitely through that infinite regress fallacy. They'll literally just go through the motions of the infinite regress fallacy.
Now,
Exactly.
I'm
And it
gonna
kind of
That's not the same.
It's coming directly from what's happening here with the flat Earth debate, not just this show, just the topic in general. I just scrolled through a few of the little shorts about flat Earth and people that are contrary to it. But you look in the comments on those videos, and they're all against the guy making the video. They're all in flat Earth favor. It's amazing to me.
Can you drop and rejoin, Neil?
We're having an effect.
Can you also drop and rejoin?
Oh yeah, we definitely have an effect. But as you were saying, Nathan, you're kind of like the concept that you're assuming they're going to come up with. They're doing that now, because I don't know if y'all know, but certain communities I kind of indulged in, I would say eavesdrop or just kind of checked out what's going on. Because like I said, I've been indulging in everything in my 57 years of life. There's this Anunnaki thing where we were visited by some people from a different planet that wasn't really a planet, but it was a big starship that everybody's claiming they're seeing called Nebudu or whatever. And what happened was they came here because they wanted the resources from Earth. So they needed slaves. So what they did is they took the monkeys, the apes, the primates, and they did a genetic crossing editing thing on us. And that's how they created, and that's what it imposed, that's what it intertwines with the Darwinism. So that's how the human, the Homo sapien or whatever, the different levels of Homo sapien is. And then that's how they got the slaves to be able to get the resources and help them get it so they could take it back to their ship, because their planet was dying because there was lack of resources, which our planet Earth had. So
Like
that's
an
all.
Avatar.
Is this a movie?
Like in Avatar.
Yeah.
Sounds like
Yes. This is John. Yeah, Cameron. Trust me, Cameron. Just like all of these other producers, they get these ideas from their own research of what they feel the philosophy of different communities and different people have. Just like with the Wakanda, all that stuff. I mean, I'm serious. Yes, this is what's been talked about for a long time. So now with these aliens coming in and all this stuff like that, that'll probably be the replacement for the Big Bang.
Well, we had
That this
the
should be their
discussion last
planet.
night. Listen, we had the discussion last night. If you know the Earth is flat, none of this affects any of us.
Right.
Well, no. But the thing is, in their paradigm, that's the beginning of existence, not the beginning of life. You're convoluting two different things.
Maybe. Either way, we don't know the full story that Flatzoid has given. So
Yeah.
Once we get the lowdown on what this new Big Bang version is, we'll comment on it when we get it.
Yeah, John.
I'm going to try to contact him on Master B and get him on the show.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
did
good
actually.
point, John. That is a comment.
I sent him a video that was this Russian guy talking about how you brainwash people. I just thought he'd be interested. And then he said, I'll cover that. And he didn't. And he was like, do you want to come on the show and cover it with me? And it was one of those things that, like, I just happened to watch it while I was watching you and thought you might be interested. It's not like it's a major deal. But I was like, yeah, if I'm around. And then I ended up editing a video and losing track of time. And then his show had been and gone. And obviously I saw that he'd finished the live show. I didn't go on and didn't go on a show when I said, yeah, sure, if I'm around, which I wasn't. So he might not be so inclined, given that I kind of let him down to a certain extent. I'm sure he's not that fussed, but you know what I mean.
All right, guys.
Hey, Adam. Hey, QE.
Just a quick favour, Nathan. So not to take the show. Will you hang about after you finish the after show today for just 10 minutes?
Sure.
Thank you.
Have I done something wrong?
That's it. No. We're just for chocolate. See what his mates can do to help him.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Is there a GoFundMe on the horizon?
That's what I'm feeling. Bit of work, bit of flat earth community.
The last two GoFundMes, I've promised that I would find a different platform to do the GoFundMe on. I've not done that. But if you know of a different platform, if you're suggesting that I run the fundraiser, which I'm happy to do, if that's what you're going to suggest, then yeah, I just need a different platform that's not GoFundMe.
Cool. I have an idea.
Pardon?
I have an idea.
What's that?
Well, I have some bond paper. I can make out official looking geometric horizons, and we could sell them on his behalf.
I've already done it.
That's what got him in this mess. He was flogging horizons years ago, weren't he?
Yeah, that's probably where the mess has come from. Catch you out eventually if you've got more than one horizon.
Well, if it's on bonded paper, that's obviously proof that it exists. You know how many anti-flat earthers need that right now?
I mean, if you can get those notarized or certified or whatever it is you need to legitimize them in authenticity of documents terms, then yeah, that lends absolute legitimacy to the horizons that you're inventing on paper. Of course.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to get a notary public stamp in the bottom left-hand corner, so it's legitimate. And then I'll invent a seal, for like the Geometric Horizon Society in the bottom right-hand corner, and I'll make a seal for that, and then just print them off.
So is this what advanced heliocentrists do in the early morning?
Discuss how to con people that have a fundamentalist religious belief or former fundamentalist religious belief in a globe, i.e. the limited audience that is anti-flat earthers, and how you could con them like they've already been conned. Hypothetically speaking, of course, we wouldn't dare dream of doing such a thing. We'll speak after John.
You wouldn't have to have advanced heliocentric knowledge to be able to understand how you could sell multiple horizons.
But with the purpose of making the comparison to how they've been sold geometry. There's no transactional worth in monetary terms when you sell someone the idea of being on a globe. There's no direct financial consequences to believing that you're on a globe. That's not what being sold the notion has as its end goal, as its purpose. Control is the end goal, as is the case with all government, or in most cases media. That's their main purpose. So, it's not a stretch when people understand already that the media, or news specifically, is there to keep control of the public in terms of their perception. Well, they're being sold something from the news, and most people won't, find it a stretch to go, yeah, the news is full of it. You're like, okay, so how far does that stretch just to the news? And I say that like I'm naive in the idea that most people think the news is nonsense. Most people don't think the news is nonsense. Most people take it at complete face value. I'm just going to shut up because my naive impression of the world is that people are smarter than they really are. And it's
so
sad.
Wait, the control.
Go on.
The control comes where? The control comes where? Because now they're saying that there's a mothership, right? And all these sightings were from the mothership, shooting little ships out, and the control is, will protect you?
Yeah,
No, the control is controlling the paradigm that they give you.
But
that's the control.
Sure, but within the paradigm, fear is always going to be at the heart of anything that's being done to explicitly control you in the moment. So, for instance, a narrative about aliens coming, that's a fear-based control. Most of them will be, if not all of them, will be fear-based.
Now, if I may, this is a topic in which people who are pro-flat Earth say, okay, which we know we don't like to do that here. They're all speculation, but this is it. Considering what Admiral Byrd said about other terrain, aka extraterrestrials, meaning not grays, lizard, reptilian, but other civilizations of past time, whom we may thought were wiped out, but may have escaped before there was this forbidden crossover of this ice wall that they say is out there surrounding, containing the waters. Let me finish. That is containing the waters. While the waters are contained, there's other terror that these so-called aliens, just like a Mexican or somebody from Antigua or Venezuela that crosses the border of the United States, considered an alien. Alien by extraterrestrial, meaning extraterra, a terrestrial from what lives out there. They have high sophisticated, way more advanced aircrafts that they can cross the border into our land of islands or continents, where they're being sighted, where they are the so-called people that Neil saying was the watchers or the controllers, watchers coming after the controllers, who were given this realm to have domain over, but became corrupt for whatever they did for the past decades, centuries, or whatever. And now this is the time where they're coming to either, get justice or to, lay down, do the reset, whatever it is. But this is a pro-flat Earth ideology that's going on, not necessarily with the heliocentric planets, rocks floating in the air, all that heliocentric space vacuum crap, but with the aspect of the things that Admiral Byrd said in other voyages who said that they saw other lands. Okay, that's
okay.
That's what's going on. I'm letting you know.
Right up until the point that you said that they were technologically advanced, history has shown that to be the case. But they never find alien races out towards space. I'm going to clarify what I mean by that. Space being out towards the horizon and aliens being people that aren't from your land. They have found them in recent history, but they're never developed countries. They don't suddenly stumble upon Night City in Cyberpunk. That doesn't happen. What they do find is underdeveloped countries with basic ways and humanity surviving reasonably, but in a basic manner. Typically, that's what they'll find. And then those underdeveloped countries that used to be called third world countries, third world country, yeah, that got changed. Now they're underdeveloped. Too telling. But the third world countries then rise up and become developed countries over time. You see it happening time and time and time and time again throughout history. So that is the case. That you go out to horizon, towards the horizon and find new land and new people. You just don't find that suddenly they've got time machines where we haven't. That is not what history has shown us.
Right. And I agree with you on that. And I wouldn't say time machines. They don't talk about time machines. They this is what they call them. Interdimensional beings who can't cross. This is how deep it is. And this is pro-flat earth. I'm letting you know where the mindset of how come heliocentric proponents be like, y'all are just as off the nut cases we are, because they generalize us. They don't come here. They generalize us because you got flat earth people out there on TikTok and at YouTube talking about interdimensional beings who can cross over from their realm to our realm. And the reason why we can't go over to that realm is because we're in this physical body. So that's what the so-called thing was for, because we're supposed to genetically edit us and make us so that we can, a bunch of craziness, basically speculated craziness. And you put that all together and you generalize, and as soon as you say you're a flat earther, you have to understand that you might be talking to somebody that heard another flat earther, so-called self-proclaimed flat earther, talking this stuff I'm telling you. So they look at you like, oh my God, you're one of them. This is what we're going up against too.
And Bigfoot too. They say Bigfoot is an interdimensional being. That's
man, guy, my cousin is Bigfoot.
There was a guy last week that came on and wanted us to coexist with all these other flat earthers who have these crazy notions. And I was trying to tell him, be nice, but we don't have a common ground for that coexistence he's looking for, because they'll go into all these arguments that they can't prove, but they want to say they believe it. And this show, why we're attracted here, it has to do with the physical and what you can prove. And it's a breath of fresh air to have a show that's designed like this. And you don't get to bring in crazy ideas unless you can prove it, right?
So let's agree on the person that came in.
Exactly.
His name was Jin, right? Because QE was telling me it wasn't Jin. That was Jin.
Yeah.
Maybe it was tonic.
Yeah, it was Jin. For sure.
But D Rose, you got taken on a trip to Narnia and dropped off and left there. You got to look at the words of what he said.
Hold on. Who got dropped off in Narnia?
You did, by Admiral Byrd. He took you on a trip to Narnia and dropped you off with his wordplay. So listen, he said beyond.
He did that. He did that as much as John Cameron took me to Avatar to Pandora.
He told you beyond the poles. So either model, that's a lie right there.
Exactly. I already know that. So
you can dismiss everything else he said as soon as he said beyond the poles, because even on a flat with ice walls or there's no poles.
Well done, D Rose.
Even on the globe, there's no beyond it. So
just let him get to the end of his statement.
I agree 1,000%, because even on Admiral Byrd's interview in Black and White, he said, well, when you go down there, that right there, he showed me that he's a propagandist for the heliocentric ideology. When you go down there, and I made that point before, if you're going to talk the terms correctly. Say out there, or in there, or out there. Don't say down there. So his whole interview showed me that he was kind of like, I don't know, walking on eggshells with his allegations.
Yeah, the guy's
But
an
now he
admiral.
didn't take me to none yet.
Yeah, he hasn't got to being an admiral by not stepping a few landmines.
Yeah. Much respect to my Navy veterans. Had to say that I'm a Navy veteran, so.
They wouldn't be landmines, would they? They'd be just mines.
And put that whole thing into a bit of context. He's an admiral for the government, and they've just had a ass whooping by their own admission out there. So it would seem sensible to mitigate your loss by saying there was a prize there and there was a force there. You have lost people. But if you listen to the language, there's no flat all round insinuation there. There's just, but actually, there's a bit more land than we thought. Now, at that point in time, Antarctica's a guess anyway, even on a ball, isn't it? So you can read into it as a flat earther or as an anti-glober, whatever you like, but that's not what he says. His language is very specific and not particularly committed to anything, and certainly not to the nature of Earth.
The only thing he does commit to is the resources, which he harps on quite a lot.
Yeah, and that's why I say that resources. Oh, maybe we should go back. What's he after? Funding. He's an admiral. Let's go back again. There's resources there. It's worth going back, but we need more men, more planes, more boats. That's a bait, isn't it?
What you're saying is, even as an admiral within his position, disseminating information to the public, he's still got his own internal agenda within the system, regardless of the information he's disseminating to the public. So his own agenda is going to be probably first and foremost on his mind when he's disseminating this information, because he's going to push forth whatever he wants going forward in his career, right? And the decision makers of that may be listening in, most likely listening in. So he's going to push certain things in certain ways in how he phrases it. And as you say, is he going to be carefully considering how he phrases the ball Earth versus flat Earth terminology? Probably not. He's just going to be under the understanding that the heliocentric paradigm is the one that's current. So therefore his phraseology will be roughly in line with that. Beyond that, I don't think he's given it any consideration. It didn't seem like that to me. That's why when people bring it up as though it's a flat Earth proof, it's like, just because Mark Sargent highlighted it. Yeah? But like when 10th Man brings up books from Celestial Navigation, it's not because he's endorsing their flat Earthism. He's just making a point. Well, Mark Sargent's point was that Antarctica's very much unknown at the point that he's giving that information, and what's being described isn't in line with the ball in regards to how it's mapped currently at the bottom. That's all he's trying to say. He's making the point. He's not saying, look, here's a flat earther. But that's how idiots on the sideline see it at a cursory glance, which is a shame. But it was fascinating the first time I watched it. But not once did I think, oh, Mark's put this forward as some sort of flat earth proof or anything of the nature. You just like certain aspects of the story in regards to Antarctica don't quite add up and have recently changed. Here's an example. That's what he was doing, and he did it very well. Mark, that is. Unless it was someone else. Did someone else highlight that prior to Mark doing it? Not that I know of. Mark Sargent was the first person to highlight that chronological scope or whatever it's called.
Damn it. I'm sorry. I walked away. I'm putting the ceiling fan up. The tail end of what Mark did, concise, just real brief, concise. What was he? Sorry.
It's just him that exposed it. There's nothing more than that.
Oh, exposed the horse crap about all that
he just put it out there. He just showed people that it was already in existence. It was already on YouTube, I assume.
Okay.
Well, I like the 24-hour sun proof, that they always claimed with Antarctica, and then they had the fake videos for.
Right.
Like even if it existed, it doesn't take away the fact you have to measure it from a flat plane. You know what I mean? So I don't know what it would be proving at that point, even if it was true.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by Arwin, Righteous Force, the Adam Meakin, 10th Man Rising, Refracted Curvature, Neil, Quantum Eraser, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Yeah,
morning.
full panel.
Hey, good morning.
It's not often we have the heavy hitters right at the beginning of the live show. Feel privileged, people, feel privileged. Please share the show. It's going to be a good one. We're going to be covering, oh joy, a bit of Neil deGrasse Tyson today. So he's become a bit of a regular feature, and as pointed out in the pre-show by 10th Man, it's mainly because he does the most concise videos, so we could be responding to stuff that takes 2 hours, but Neil deGrasse Tyson does a good job of keeping it under 15 minutes, which is about the right amount of time to cover in a live show after doing a couple of housekeeping questions. With that being said, is there any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core moving in any direction at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
That's got to be the funniest one.
If for ones, if you try to take angle measurements, you would melt from the globe.
So what John's saying is, when you take the flat plane that you'll acquire angles from in order to do celestial navigation, and you want to infer that you're in some way utilising a spherical Earth surface, then the way to do that is to transpose that flat plane towards the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth at something called the equatorial plane, which then has what we recently termed the globe burger. That is to say, a flat plane, that's your meat, and then your lettuce and bun is wrapped around it in the shape of a ball. But around that is then the celestial sphere, which is what you'll be drawing the angle out from at the centre of the Earth that's not being used, out to the celestial sphere, which is the stars, from the flat plane you're standing on, and here comes John's point, at the centre point in the middle of the molten iron core. Unless I've completely bolstered up your point, and that wasn't your point, John.
Yeah, that was.
Oh, jolly good. Happy days. So there we go. You'll be standing at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth at the molten iron core if you're using any remnants whatsoever of a globe Earth idea when performing celestial navigation functions. Any evidence that the sky is a vacuum? Gas pressure without a container? Don't all go at once?
Well, if it would be, then nobody could be telling you, because we wouldn't be able to breathe in order to tell you.
It's worth a plug for the Ballbuster show that just went by. It was a good show. So check it out on Quantum Eraser YouTube channel. It was the most recent Ballbusters. I don't know what number it is. We're getting right up to the hundreds maybe by now. It's got to be a lot of shows. Anyway, that most recent show was covering gas pressure without a container. And Quantum Eraser during the presentation does a very good job of explaining how they'll go to delta X, which is say, you ask the question, how can you have, I'll exaggerate these words, gas pressure without a container? Their response is, we have gas pressure gradients. How do you explain that? That's their response, to beg the question and ignore what you're asking and include it in their response or question or rebuttal, which is to say, with my automatic assumption of gas pressure without containment, we also have gradients. Yeah, gas pressure gradients. So first you need to explain where you get the gas pressure from, given that you've got a heliocentric sky vacuum with men apparently in suits that need to contain their gas pressure, looking back on an Earth that doesn't have any containment, not filling the availability of space. So gas doesn't behave like that. It just disperses. So we wouldn't be alive if the sky was a vacuum. Any more to add on this, or should we go straight to the...
Right now.
Yeah, I want to add.
Adam first, then QE. Go ahead, Adam.
Well, it relates to QE. So on Saturday, I was listening, literally got home from the restaurant, started listening a bit. And the point I chirped in was, what's the number one? It's not often I'll eat humble pie, but I think I have to. So the statement was, what's the number one flat earth proof?
Celestial navigation for me. I don't know what the answer would be now, or if that's the wrong answer for this question.
Yeah.
I
was going to admit defeat. I was going to admit defeat.
Hold on, everyone else. Can you clear the airwaves? Adam, go ahead.
I was going to admit defeat that the number one for a flat earth proof is celestial navigation. Even though gas pressure has always been my go-to. But both gas pressure and the black swan don't prove a flat earth. They deny a ball earth. So I think I might have to eat humble pie. The only get out, and I want your help here, QE, is gas behaviour. To claim an atmosphere is the sticky point for me. That denies gas behaviour. Yeah? And the only way gas behaves that we witness and experience would be commensurate with a flat plane.
Quick shout out to Mike 808 before QE gives his response. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Go ahead, QE.
I don't know about that one. Gas pressure without a container is a heliocentric killer.
I'm not on about without the container. I'm just on about the stratification of the gas pressure gradient, the causation of that, and how it would sit in reality. They've got to have, at any level, curving gradients. We don't witness curving gradients.
Well, that's true.
But that's
its definition of gas behaviour.
That annoys me greatly.
I might be able to crowbar it in.
That's a delta debunking. So, okay, yes, you can't have a gas pressure gradient, and you're saying that as they claim their gas pressure gradient, it's going to curve and have varying gas pressure gradients as a curve through the stratified atmosphere. Okay, but where'd you get the gas pressure from in the first place? Sorry, QE.
Oh, that makes it a ball buster, doesn't it? Where'd you get the gas pressure in the first place? I'm not focusing on that because I'm trying to link it to the nature of the surface. So I don't need to make the containment arguments implicit. Yeah, because I'm trying to make it a number one flat earth proof, not a number one ball destroyer. So the containment's a given because that's a natural law. Yeah, what I'm talking about is the stratification and how it's experienced isn't commensurate with a ball. It's only commensurate with a flat plane.
But the moment you do that, you're no longer talking to normal people.
Yeah.
You're talking to experts.
Advanced heliocentric.
Oh, brother.
No. The problem, Adam, is that it's an inference that you can draw, and with almost every single housekeeping question, there is that one step that you can take further and take it to a flat earth proof in almost all of them. But to have that as the reason why it would sit at number one as a flat earth proof when its heart, its origin is a debunking of space, therefore a heliocentric killer, I don't know, man.
Am I going to have to concede here?
Well, I don't know. I didn't know it was some big bee in your bonnet that you had to have gas pressure as number one flat earth proof.
Oh, it has been. It's like taking away my favourite toy.
Not at all. I've never considered it a flat earth proof. Up until about 2 years ago, I was always of the opinion that I didn't have one that I liked, and I'd get QE go, well, what about my Sea Sparrow missile or something like that? And I'd go, no, I don't like that for X, Y, and Z reason. Or I'd rattle off my reasons why I didn't feel that I'd got a satisfactory flat earth proof, in quotes, until celestial navigation. So if you can ask me, where does that sit in terms of proving flat earth? Well, I didn't put my mark next to any of them up until that point. So that's the only one for me. What else have you got? You give me another one and I'll give you objections to it. If you give me a flat earth proof that isn't a globe debunking, then I'll find objection in it, I guarantee you.
Yeah, another one.
That's where I'm at.
Oh, QE. Go ahead, QE.
No, I have another one that I didn't go over. Maybe we ought to finish this one first.
Or maybe you can offer up. No, this is going to be slightly. This is going to be a tricky wicket for me to sit on, really, with you being my mentor. And now me asking you to offer up flat Earth proofs for me to criticise. I should really watch my step here, shouldn't I?
No, not at all.
Well, okay, I've only given one example in the past, which was the sea sparrow, which is to say, am I going to validate that?
Yeah, that's the only problem you have. But I'm ex-military, so I already know that's a clear proof.
Fair enough. But for me, that wasn't.
Hoorah.
What
Yeah.
else you got?
That's not a problem. I don't have an issue with that. We hit number one proof. The easiest one is celestial navigation. It's just too easy. It's killer. Kills the geometry, their geometry, and it kills the globe. It's too easy, right? So it's number one for me. I did want to bring something else up with the gas pressure thing that I didn't mention, and you guys will recognize this. Their comeback is the atmosphere. An oxymoron by itself, but I digress. The atmosphere is different than gas pressure.
Well, that's true.
What?
That's true. Atmosphere,
Yeah,
sphere-shaped
true.
air, oxymoron. That doesn't exist. But it's still a term that you can look up in the dictionary. So what is atmosphere if it isn't air in a sphere shape? Because that's an oxymoron. Well, it's the description in the heliocentric model of air in a sphere shape. Right, okay, so the description in the heliocentric model of air in a sphere shape, aka atmospheric or atmosphere, isn't air. So that's a true statement.
No, atmospheric pressure is different than gas pressure. What's atmo mean?
Air.
There you go.
But
Is there a gas?
The pressure of air in a sphere shaped. Sorry, that's
No.
Yeah?
No.
Yeah?
Atmosphere, what they're trying to say is we already know the atmosphere is an oxymoron. Let that go. Atmospheric pressure is different than gas pressure. So what they're saying is gas pressure is different than gas pressure. Take
I
the
follow
sphere
that.
out.
But
Exactly.
keeping it in my, yes, terrestrial refraction is not refraction. If you're to say, well, refraction is light deviating from straight. So if you're to say that terrestrial refraction isn't light deviating from straight, that is the same as you saying atmosphere, sphere-shaped air pressure is the same as air pressure. And I would fundamentally disagree because it balls up an aspect of my argumentation style.
No.
Well, yeah, it does. It's not agree or disagree. It does. It does, because I would say, no, refraction isn't atmospheric refraction. Those two things aren't the same, but I can detail what atmospheric refraction is, describing a rate of the radius and a line that's bent.
Yeah, I brought it up, for fuck's sake.
Oh, go on.
Can I see if I can get your point? Are you saying that within, even if you give them the sphere shapedness, the fundamental of the claim is that they are saying that gas molecules, when considered in the air, do not behave like gas molecules do in any other form of containment?
Yes, that is what they're saying. That's exactly what they're saying. It's a concession.
It's not, though, is it? Because
they're saying
fundamentally, to have atmosphere,
it's a concession.
They do have to behave differently.
They're saying air in my model, labelled atmospheric, is not behaving the same as air you experience. That's what they're saying with that.
Exactly. They're saying that air in the atmo is subjected to the effects of gravity.
In the model, that would also be correct.
But it has to be subject to gravity to call it.
Hold on, that might not be true. Hold on, is that
Can
actually
I see
true?
this model?
Oh, hold on, Neil. I don't want to get that wrong. I don't actually think air is subject to gravity in their model. Is it?
Yeah, it is. And remember the decaying orbits of gas molecules that Neil deGrasse Tyson talks about. There's only one thing. There's no containment. We did the AI chat, didn't we? There's no containment. The only thing that within their model that's stopping those gas molecules behaving as gas molecules is some escape velocity, which is due to gravity. Yeah, that's or a decaying orbit, which is due to gravity. The causation for spherical shaped radiation is gravity.
Man, today's Neil deGrasse Tyson review video is going to be spot on.
Well, that's obviously my segue, unless QE's got anything else to add. And I know Neil wanted to get a word in before we do.
Nope. I ain't got anything.
I had something to say.
Go ahead. Was that D? Go ahead.
I had something. Yeah, I just something real quick. I'm speaking on with the entropy and the containment and the gas gradients and the containment being required, all the prerequisites that prove that we don't live under a vacuum and everything. And I know y'all said this before, but Flatzoid was talking about the sulfur hexafluoride, and there was people asking, well, how come when you put that in the tank and that doesn't go up? And and Flatzoid agreed with me. It may not go up, but it expands.
Whoa.
Put it in the fish tank.
Whoa. Stop. Sorry. You and Flatzoid. Stop.
Huh?
You and Flatzoid are under the misapprehension that sulfur hexafluoride doesn't go up.
No. This is what the hedocentric people were throwing inquiries. Well, if that's the case, how come? I would never mock his voice, Flatzoid, like that. This is what they were saying. They were saying, well, how come hexafluoride, sulfur, doesn't go up? And we're explaining it does go up. It just goes up slower. And the reason why it has to be brought out in the tank and not carried in someone's arms is because it requires the same thing, a container. And even though it doesn't go up fast like helium does, it still never goes down. It never goes down, goes boom, boom. It never does that.
No, it does.
And it bounces.
Stop.
On the lid,
Stop again.
actually.
Stop.
When you put the lid on,
Stop. Everyone stop.
Like
Hello?
covering.
That's also wrong. Yes, it does go down. It goes in all directions. What's happening with sulfur hexafluoride is you're introducing a high concentration of a gas into an already existing gas. So it still has to bounce between the gaps in all directions. Down, up, you name it, it's going in all directions. Now, when you confine 3 of the vectors in a tank...
And because of its density being more than the oxygen, nitrogen that we breathe, that's the reason why it does go down.
We're trying to tell you, D-Rose, but you're trying to tell us while we're trying to tell you.
No, can I just pick this up? This is to do with diffusion. Okay, this is how you separate gases, and this is what's going to happen. Because you've got one concentration of one substance, the sulfur hexafluoride, and then you've got this pocket of mixed air sat above it. Yeah, you've got very large sulfur hexafluoride molecules. They're going to keep getting smacked by the air above, and it's going to be a slower diffusion rate for a molecule that size into the air than something that's a bit smaller. So this isn't, again, gas behavior that we're discussing. This isn't something unexpected. This is exactly how gases behave. And we use these to filter gases, this diffusion rate, the difference in the molecule size, speed, and the rate of probability of collision, which is why we have an ideal gas law, an ideal. Each one's slightly different when we've got things, and we use this, and this is gas behavior. It's not a disproof, it's a proof. And as Nathan says, they are going in all directions. But the trouble is, you see, there's containment on 3 sides. So the only rate of diffusion is up. Yeah, so it does take a bit of time. That's it. But it's gas behavior that's governing that diffusion rate based on the molecules.
Right.
Friggin' Adam's on fire this morning.
You've got the crux.
Go to Italy more often.
Yes, he is.
But you've got the crux.
Is my specialist subject, which is why I didn't want to give it up.
Okay. Right, the summary now. Yeah, you've got the crux of it correct when you use the word correctly, which is to say that the gases will diffuse into the availability of volume. But if the availability of volume is already occupied by lots of other gases, it's got to work its way between them with only one vector available to it, up, as Adam just described, because it's contained by a fish tank. Therefore, as it diffuses, it's gonna go up. That's where it can only go in one direction. So the fact that over time you can watch the little tinfoil boat sink into the tank, that's because the gases around it, the sulfur hexafluoride, are only going up, literally debunking their notions of gas get down, go boom, boom.
As soon as you put that boat on, you reduce significantly the surface area for diffusion to occur, which is what will also slow the rate of diffusion, which is why the boat sits there longer with the boat on it, and the gas would sit without the boat.
Got you. No doubt.
Cool. Right. Any more?
And by the way, two things. Y'all, I don't know if it's your server, Nathan. I don't know if everybody else hears it, but you're going in and out on very crucial words, and I'm getting like partial sentences. I'm gonna go out and come back in.
That's because your mic's wide open while I'm talking. What do you expect? The whole system's gated, D-Rose. Like now, when you're still talking while I'm talking, you're not going to hear me because it's gated. So if you want to hear me, stop talking. It's just that simple. Fading in and out while I'm talking over you. Yeah, shocking.
Can I just ask a quick question? It's something that's been like heavy on my mind, but I know Adam has tried to explain it to me before, but I don't seem to get it though. So I'm asking again. The whole idea of gas molecules, right? It's a convention, right? It's agreed upon convention of how these things work. But I'm just trying to figure out have we ever seen these? Have ever been isolated in a system?
What is this agreed upon convention? Where'd you get that from? It's not a meter.
Based on what I'm reading. Based on what I'm reading, sorry. That's what I'm seeing. It's particle theory, right?
So where gas pressure is a convention. I want that citation.
No, that's reasonable. Hold on.
I'm not
Hold
arguing
on. Let's just draw a line over this so it doesn't last forever. When you say ideal gas law, then you can immediately say, no, that's reasonable because we're talking about something that's idealistic. Therefore, it's got to be an agreed upon convention in that respect, hasn't it?
No, he's talking about gas molecules, not the ideal gas law.
Oh, is he? I'll ask him. Are you talking about ideal gas law as an agreed upon convention, or just gas being molecules?
I think it's a little bit of both, right? Because ideal gas law, I mean, it is a convention, right? That puts different gases in little boxes, and we're trying to study how they behave.
I wouldn't call that a convention. Let's get Adam in here. Adam, would you call the ideal gas law a convention?
No, it's a calculation.
Me neither.
I'm not sure what we're meaning by the convention. Are we meaning we've never actually seen a molecule of gas under a microscope, or are we meaning we can't see the effects like within Brownian motion?
Or are we focusing on one aspect of his question before getting to the conclusion of his question?
I'm not sure what the aspect is. That's what I'm trying to define. I'm not attacking that. I'm asking what is the criticism? Is it that
we didn't get it because Kiwi jumped over the convention word? We didn't get it because Kiwi jumped over the bit where he said convention, and that was the end of that, and we focused on that bit. But we haven't actually got to the end of his statement. Do you want to start again? Hopefully, you'll get to the end of your actual question. Just don't use the word convention, and hopefully, you'll get a bit further in the statement. We'll see.
Yeah, it's just ideally, I would like to do some research into how these were isolated to determine how they move. You know what I mean? Because when I look online, I see a lot of research done into it, and every time we get to how they move, it's a cartoon drawing, right? And that's what I wanted to see. Because I mean, you can experience gas pressure all around. You can see what it does, especially when you do like bromine experiments or whatever. You know, you can see it do something. But in terms of actually going down to on the molecular level to ascertain exactly what it's doing, has that ever been done, or is this the concept to explain these things?
I'd put the same to you. The liquid state. Have we ever seen liquid water molecules flowing freely over each other? Have we ever fully identified that crystalline lattice of ice? We have to recognize that molecules are very, very small. We can't actually see optically a molecule with our eyes. Too small. So there is a limitation. But you can also draw your own conclusion with a demonstration, can't you? So that look at Brownian motion, if that's what you're after, an exemplar of physical world where you can see the effects of these gas molecule collisions on the subparticles.
That's
this
exactly
is also where I had.
Hold on. He's saying that's good. Should repeat that then, Adam. You can see the effect of the collision on the subparticles. What does that mean?
Subparticles. So within there, you'll see the tiny little bits of soot, which will be specks of light moving in random directions as the gas molecules collide into them, yeah, and send them on a different path. That's kind of the demonstrator. If you're after something visual for you know, to hold on to prove it, then that would be the way I would look at that, with the concept that I recognise I can't see atoms.
I understand your limitation, Adam, and I appreciate your honesty. You've always been honest about the topic, so I appreciate that. It's just that I'm actually really looking for how does air actually move, and if anybody actually seen it. You know what I mean? That's what I'm looking for that's basically my own hunger for the topic, I guess.
Well, we had an example earlier.
If we all say,
I was just going to say, we did have an example earlier. As much as it's used in our opponents, or they believe it's used to their favour, the example that we gave earlier with the sulfur hexafluoride is a great example of how gas behaves. If you've got a boat floating on it, and that's not water, you can see there's no solids in there. It is gas. But as time progresses, the tinfoil boat sinks. Why? Well, because the gas that it was floating on is vacating the availability of volume that it currently had available to it, because there's an opening above it. So anything that can work its way between the gas particles as we've described it, given that we know they are in the air and we are definitely breathing them and they are creating pressure, so we know they're there. And we know that we've taken the sulfur hexafluoride and introduced it to the fish tank. So why is the boat going down? Well, because the gas is getting out. So you can describe that with them being like little balls that move at a high velocity. And you can say, yeah, but do we ever really see them as little balls? And the answer is no. But you can still see the effect.
absolutely appreciate that, and that's what I actually would love to say, that they are physical balls. I would actually like to somebody show me that they're physical balls. If not, then they're not.
Well, they can't.
And
Well, they can't. And
yeah.
when our opponents do it, we use it against them. So when the rumpus says, well, they're like balls, and what goes up must come down, gravity. And you go, no. Despite the fact that we can describe them as being like balls, they're not behaving like solid, bonded, bouncy balls. Shout out to PhD Clown Thunderfoot. In the respect that they're displacing the air around them when they come back down after being thrown up. Well, the bouncy ball's displacing the air because it's more dense than it. But the air itself is moving in all directions. That's why you can breathe up on top of Everest. Again, another example that's weak and used against us when it's actually affirming the effects of entropic dispersion. In other words, there isn't much vegetation up on Everest. The fact that planes can fly higher than Everest is because there is air there, right? For the Bernoulli effect to work, so there's air there. How the hell did it get there? There's no vegetation in the sky. So it must have displaced upwards. There's no other way to have it be there. But they ask us about pressure gradients, like, well, how are we breathing on top of Everest? You're like, because gas has made its way up there? You know, from all the nice yummy vegetation that produces it on the ground? That oxygen's made its way up to the top of Everest, where there's sod all vegetation producing it. Right? Furthermore, it's going up at higher altitudes for aeroplanes to utilise that gas, right? So it's all going up. Well, why? Well, because that's how gas behaves. It just moves in all directions. Doesn't matter if it's balls or not.
yeah, exactly. I just wanted to say something, and you just ended off with what I wanted to say. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's balls or not. We can definitely see how it behaves, and that's the point.
Exactly.
It's not balls, it's gas molecules.
Exactly, it's gas.
That's part of the ridiculum of Thunderfoot Clown, wasn't it? Why we laughed. Because if you think of it like balls, you're always going to get stuck in some physicality bias.
Well, no, he justified it with a graph. He rolled out Boltzmann. It's a long time ago. I can't. It's vague, but from memory, he just rolled out the Boltzmann graph. Anyway, Should we move on to Tyson?
All right.
Sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to use this opportunity to plug a video if I could, when you can give me an opportunity.
Slick, go ahead.
Right. I got a latest video on biblical cosmology, and this time it's as a molten looking glass verse, right? So if you want to know more about that verse and, well, what's in the video, I recommend you check it out. And yeah, what else am I supposed to say?
Righteous. Biblical cosmology. What's that relating to? You got me interested.
Well,
expound a little, sir.
Well, by biblical cosmology, I mean, if it's in God's word, I believe it, right? So my cosmology is based on what God says it is. So that's what I mean by biblical cosmology. Is that clear? I mean, I don't want to say is that clear as to be rude, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's the point I was trying to. So you're just talking structure.
I'm just yeah, it's what God says. You know, what
You're
He
doing
says
a
about
crap
His
job.
creation.
Right, so if you want to learn about what potentially the sky is, that would be the firmament, or you want to know what the sun is, in regards to the biblical reference to it, that's what he's covering when he says biblical cosmology. That's what the videos are about, having watched them as an audience member. Sometimes it's hard to summarise your own stuff. But yeah, go and check it out, Be Here or Be Sphere, on the Righteous Force YouTube channel. And what's the latest video called?
It's as a molten looking glass. And thank you very much, Nathan.
My pleasure. I like your videos. I've been watching.
I enjoyed it. Righteous. I checked you out. I liked it.
All right, don't spoil it since you've seen it.
I'm not.
Don't check the comment section because he spoils it.
You spoiling it by telling me not to spoil it.
But you can check the comment sections afterwards. And thanks again.
Unfortunately, it's not really in your remit in terms of the biblical cosmology to cover things like cities having streets paved with gold.
I'm not sure what you mean there.
Yeah, they're not paved with gold. Read it properly.
There's a current spat between P-Brain and Jeranism about cities with streets paved with gold.
Yeah, I'm with P-Brain on that, Nathan.
You're with P-Brain on that?
Yeah, it's not.
Well,
why wouldn't
it
it's
be?
like gold. It's the glowing of the light of the streets that's the Bible's describing there. It's not claiming that the New Jerusalem's going to be gold roads, I don't think. That's not how I've read it.
It's as gold.
But it is an interesting debate between them two. Yeah. Glow like gold, isn't it? It has a luminosity like gold to be that.
Yeah, I mean, P-Brain's demeaning of Jaron's argument is sometimes a bit unreasonable, because Jaron has actually got a few good points, because if you just take it as literally, no pun intended with the as, then there's, he's got a reasonable point to make, but then, he's doubled and tripled down on it. It's just an interesting one. I was getting to the point where I was like, I'm now a little bit lost towards the third or fourth video, whereas at first it was clear as crystal.
The word "as" is a simile or metaphor.
Yes,
the word
indeed.
"as."
Correct.
So yeah, Jeranism has no point to make.
That was going to be my conclusion, John, but you've done it for me. Which is to say that only the other day someone was saying, well, when it comes to what do we take literally and what do we take to be as metaphor, well, it clarifies it, and that those two little letters, they clarify it as exactly that. As gold doesn't mean gold. Yeah? If you're sturdy as a table,
come on, Nate,
doesn't make you a table.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, like
just to add this,
he says, dumb as a pot handle.
No need.
And just to add to this, the name of the video is "As a Molten Looking Glass," so something else to look forward to in the video.
Glad you finally got that. That's why I used you to juxtapose exactly that perfect ending. And a good plug. Plug your channel again. Go ahead.
Right, the Righteous Force channel. And the Virgin Droid, I noticed he posted it in text chat, so the link is right there, handy to grab. Thank you, Virgin Droid.
But it's these kinds of discussions that, in a very flat earth debate-esque manner, Righteous Force is covering these things from a point of view that if you're not into the Bible, i.e. you're not even a Christian, then you'll still find it fascinating, because it's just a point of view where they're talking about these aspects that we do debate about in a very matter-of-fact way as per the text. Hence me enjoying that series. I'm not some devout Christian. I'm not. I don't profess to be. But in the same way I used to find Paula's videos fascinating, I find yours, Paula being Bible literalist, then turned to Level Up. She got a habit of changing a channel name. But Level Up is her current channel name, I believe. But it was formerly Bible literalist. And she was the one that taught me exactly that. Take the literal bits literally and the metaphorically bits metaphorically. It pretty much laid it out for you in each context. You know, the word "as" is the example in this, and you're saying as molten looking glasses go, it's a similar thing, right?
Right.
Coolio. Right, so check out the Righteous Force channel. Hopefully, as you say, Righteous has had his link posted by Divergent Droid, who is fantastic. I was going to mention this about Divergent Droid. I don't know if I've mentioned it before. I'm sure I've mentioned it to him in the chat. One of my Patreons, Goldie, is also a moderator for Growing Up in Scientology channel. So check out Growing Up in Scientology if you're interested in that subject, which I am at the moment. And I very much enjoy his content. Very, very interesting. But she explained to me that in terms of her moderation, you know, everybody who goes into that chat knows who Goldie is and will say hello to her, or vice versa. She'll say hello to them. And she explained to me that her moderation style was entirely based on Divergent Droid's style of moderation in Flat Earth debate. So I was like, wow. So I did tell him. He was obviously flattered. But it's just worth it when you get that that's such a high compliment. It's worth spreading that fact. And as does QE, I'm sure he echoed the sentiment on Bullbusters on Saturday. But we're so lucky to have such a fantastic mod. You know, it just outshines every other mod who might do, you know, oh, that annoyed me and they'll ban them. You know, the Divergent Droid goes so way above and beyond any other moderator. Out to you. Yes, Nathan, isn't he ace? Yes, we all agree. Wow, praise be to Divergent Droid. Yay, hooray. Yeah, I'm glad all my panel agree with me. Glad I made that point.
I thought silence was a sin.
It was, that's why I pretended to be you. Right, let's do this Neil deGrasse Tyson video. And as is always the case, were somebody to respond to me, like we're responding to this video here, I would hope that they would share my link like I'm sharing Neil deGrasse Tyson's, and encourage their viewers, like I'm encouraging my viewers, to go to his video, leave him a like, help him in the algorithm. I know it's Neil deGrasse Tyson, but he's no different on YouTube, according to the algorithmic nonsense that obviously we all believe. So let him know Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, because as has been the case with many a Neil deGrasse Tyson video, we have responded to this video about the edge of the Earth. Oh, okay, cool subject matter, 10th man today. So there we go. So that's what we're going to be covering. So we're going to get straight into it, unless there's anything else. I've asked a couple of times. Hopefully there won't be. Anything else anybody wants to add before we do get into this? No? Nathan Oakley 1980 send me, let Neil deGrasse Tyson know. We love his stuff. That's why we're always responding to it.
Hey.
So Chuck, how do you know how big something is?
Yeah, measure it.
You measure it, right? So you pull out a ruler. Let's say it's a table, and you measure it. Okay. So there are two things working against you on that. Mm-hmm. One of them is, you know, how close together are the hash lines on the ruler?
Right.
Right? Because if your table...
So far, I've got to be honest, I have no idea. What's he babbling on about? Anybody? We're only 27 seconds in and I'm already lost. Anybody help me out?
He does it backwards. He's going to tell you later what he's talking about.
Okay. I sense a magic trick.
Table ends up between two of them, then you don't know how long your table is. If you're going to report to me, you can only say it's between here and there, and venture a guess to where it is from one marker to the next.
What? What? It's just described measuring something with a tape measure and saying that you can't give anything better than a best guess. Am I missing something here? But this already sounds like doublespeak.
I think he's using two of the notches on the ruler, but you don't know how big the ruler is.
They're saying he's got a ruler without a scale on it, without numbers on it. So you've got notches, and he's saying you can only count up the number of notches, and then say it's 57 notches on a ruler, but without scale, that doesn't mean anything if you're talking to someone down the phone, for instance. Is that his point?
Well, if you take two notches and your table is the size in between those two notches, that doesn't tell you anything because you don't know how big the ruler is, I think is where he's going.
Gotcha. So you've got a massive ruler that's used for measuring football fields, and just coincidentally, between the first and second notches, about the size of your table. Okay, now I'm following.
Okay.
It's kind of like half, maybe. What you'll give me a guess, fine, but you won't know exactly because you don't have the metrics to determine that. Okay?
Right. It's like measuring in hands.
You see, straight away, now I've got the concept that he's trying to peddle, which took me a while. I'm not going to lie, I'm not a mathematician. Right? I can debunk the entire heliocentric scaling system via Kepler just by that concept that he's laid down. So, in terms of the amount of fuel that you would use to journey to the moon, if you're going to scale the distance to the moon based on an R value, and you can't measure that value, and we've debunked the claimed measurements of that value, then you can't lay down how far it is to travel to the moon. Because we can debunk the scale, Kepler's third law of interplanetary motion, and the R value at its heart to give you the scaling distances. So based on this concept, if we take away the scale on your ruler for distance to moon, which is R, 1 AU, being the distance to the sun, how are you going to claim the fuel consumption in your sky vacuum second law of thermodynamics violation when we take away the scale of your ruler? The answer? You can't. We just debunked the entire scale value system used to claim to go to the moon with.
He's 7 hands tall. Really? That's all?
Well, hands is actually
It's just X number of R units to the moon. All right. Where'd you get R? Oh, right. We debunked all of those. So how'd you scale it? How'd you know the scale's right? You don't. It's all made up. All of the distances to all of the planets that they claim in their heliocentric sky vacuum are all made up.
Specific measurement. I mean, I think the hand is 4 inches.
Oh, really?
The width of your hand.
Where'd you get an AU? Where'd you get AU? Distance to sun. All right, you need R for scaling. All right, we debunked it.
Yeah.
Look at that. I see. Now I just learned something there.
Horse heights are measured in hands.
In hands, right. I knew that the horses were measured in hands, but I didn't know that the hand had an actual unit.
And stars are measured with AU. And we debunked the scaling value of R. So, hands, meters, millimeters, inches, feet, yards, stadia. Who cares? Your scaling value for your distances to your planets is all debunked.
It's around 4 inches. Don't quote me on that, but yeah.
Someone trying to add something?
Yeah, just to add to that, he's talking about units. Well, whether it's a hand, a foot, a meter, a yard, they're all actually defined and physically measurable. And this goes to the point you're making. His R isn't. And that's his scaler for everything, something that he's yet to confirm before he launches people off into a second law of thermodynamics violation. But he can't. That's the point. All of the things he's using in his example are quantifiable in the real world. R isn't.
Right. Perfect. Thank you for that. That's where I couldn't quite get myself to, Adam. Perfect. Glad you're here.
That's cool.
Yeah. Okay.
That's cool.
Okay. Okay. So even if you had the precision to measure the length of the table, if you go down under a microscope, like a really good microscope, like an electron microscope, that's the kind of microscopes where you see all of the hairs on the bugs, and you see the eyeballs of the fly.
Okay, we know what an electron microscope is. Thank you.
Those kind of microscopes. If you do that, you'll see that the edge of the table is not smooth. It's actually got texture.
So what?
So which argument?
Go on.
That Rex Bebb's argument as to flat.
Oh, right, trying to
If you take
debunk an
anything-
aspect by microscopic undulations in a surface.
Yeah. So he's making that point that it's not flat. I'd agree with him.
Okay, but for what reason? I'm still not. I'm normally tracking along with the NDT example most of the way, but this one, I don't know. I'm not following along very well with this at all.
Feature of the texture are you going to measure it to and then report back to me the width of the table?
Well, okay.
What happens is at some point you just give up and say, Neil,
I can't
you're annoying
measure
me.
anything. Right.
you can't measure anything unless you just agree. You just agree how you're going to take the measurement, and then you're good with that. Well,
okay. I mean,
there you go. I've got it, mate. Okay, I've got it.
Go on.
So, because the table isn't perfectly flat, any width, any measurement of it, say its depth, will be incorrect until we agree and say that tabletop is 2 inches thick. Then we ignore the reality. So if we can agree on a convention, in this case R, then we can move forward to measurement.
I see. So long as we're all conceding that we're going to be measuring things in an Earth diameter that assumes it's a sphere, then the convention's laid down for us to move forward with scale to give us distances to lights in the sky based on Kepler's third law. But we have to agree on a certain convention. Now, basing it on the R value is a bit too close to the bone. So if we base it on an extrapolation of the R in the form of an AU, and we all just accept that we are going to agree on 1 AU being one distance to the sun for the scale, so it's once removed from a spherical R value for an Earth that's a sphere, then we can move forward to do the measurements to the lights in the sky, Adam.
That's my sniff of where he's going, that if we can agree a consensus, we can move forward.
Okay. Let's see if you're right.
if you have that problem with solid objects, imagine the challenge measuring the extent of gaseous objects.
You called it within one sentence of that point being made. That is so brutally brilliant. Adam Meakin, ladies and gentlemen.
Just imagine.
Yes.
That was epic. That
was right.
None of us have seen this. I'm speaking on your behalf out of turn. I assume you haven't seen this, Adam.
No.
Me neither. Okay, that was brilliant. Go on, someone else wanted to get a word in? Go ahead. I think it was just someone agreeing.
Yes. I believe you measure that and how bad it smells.
Not all gas came out of your rear end, okay?
I wonder how many puddles of, what would it be, methane that comes out of you in that regard that's smelly? I mean, do they tend to fall down, go boom boom? Gravitationally attracted to the floor? Or do they also disperse throughout the availability of volume till they dissipate to nothing and you haven't got a smelly, horrible smell in your room anymore? You know, they work their way through any crack in the room. Be it an open door or a tiny little gateway between the, I don't know, substrate of the outside wall and your inside wall. Gas will find a way. It's entropy. Yeah? Hence your smelly example debunks out of space, because that's how gas behaves. You're describing how gas disperses throughout volume. Yeah. It doesn't form puddles, does it?
In this world. Just saying. So you can ask, how high up does the atmosphere go?
Atmo what now? Now, QE has recently told me that it's an oxymoron. In fact, on this show. But I would also suggest that it is a begging the question fallacy. Because QE's like, no, it's an oxymoron. Not a begging the question fallacy. I say it is. Because you're assuming sphericity. Well, your outcome, in terms of Earth being a sphere, necessitating there being sphere-shaped air around said sphere, is to beg the question that Earth's a sphere. Would you not agree?
Yeah, I guess I would.
No, I'd agree with you both. In English, it's an oxymoron. Yeah? In reality and supposition, it's a begging the question fallacy.
Wow, so we're both right. Good. We can move on.
We are both right, but by being right, doesn't that also make me wrong for my earlier example where I say no? I make them accept that what they describe in their model as being different to reality is simply because it's in their model. But if I do this now, haven't I then conceded that point as being wrong if I say no? This example with oxymoron sphere-shaped air is actually a begging the question fallacy, because then I'm accepting that sphere-shaped air can be in reality as a begging the question fallacy. I think I'm undoing my own point from earlier. I'll have to give this some consideration.
Yeah, give it consideration.
I will do.
Well, so you ascend, and you say, is there a sign that says you are now leaving Earth's atmosphere?
Oh, I wonder why you're posing that as a question. Well, that would be the Kármán line. Yeah? Where the gases burn their bra in defiance of natural law, eat a few cakes, and then go down, go boom boom with their weight.
No. No.
So what's the Kármán line? You know, whenever you want to ascribe a volume because you need to calculate anything to do with Earth's, quote, atmosphere, sphere-shaped air oxymoron, you would define the volume at the Kármán line. But you're saying no? No? No, you're absolutely right. This is an embedded confession. Yeah, that's right. Gas fills space, doesn't it, Neil? Yeah? Entropic law applies to gas. So no, there is no point where the gas just stops in the arbitrary defined sphere-shaped air oxymoron. It would all fill the space. We'd all be dead if the sky was a vacuum, because there's no barrier to stop the gas expanding into the availability of volume, sphere-shaped air or otherwise.
The atmosphere gets continually thinner.
Right.
And you know this because as you ascend a mountain, the air pressure drops.
So as the gas disperses, it becomes thinner. So there's very little gas being produced at the top of a mountain, as we described earlier. And as the gas in high concentration at its origin spreads out, in this case, up towards the tops of mountains, there's less of it because it's not being produced there. Yeah, that's entropy. That's gas spreading out to fill space. But in order for that gas to maintain pressure, it first be under containment by necessary antecedent consequent relationship that is gas pressure and containment. So for this example, with Neil deGrasse Tyson describing gas dispersion, you would first had to have had containment for him to describe this example.
It's harder for you to breathe. You can still breathe, but just every lung's worth of air has less oxygen in it. Okay? That's your evidence that the air pressure is getting lower and lower and lower.
Should have never smoked, man.
Okay.
God, this is killing me.
This continues. You go into an airplane. Airplanes are pressurized.
Right.
Which means they put air in there. Otherwise, you would suffocate if you roll down the windows.
So let's get it straight. To be pressurized, as per Neil deGrasse Tyson's description, you must be, as an air particle in the description, be in something. So to pressurize the aeroplane, the gas in the containment of the aeroplane is what's being described. Right. So in this example, you've got pressure in the aeroplane because the gas is inside a container. Okay.
All right. So those oxygen masks, those are there in case the airplane loses pressure. And you're breathing very low density air, has hardly any oxygen in it.
So if there's a hole in the pressurized containment of the aeroplane, the high pressure gas inside the plane will vacate into the low pressurized system outside the aeroplane. Okay. So therefore, if the sky was a low pressure system, 10 to the minus 17 Torr vacuum in the sky vacuum assertion of heliocentrism, then all of the gas would expand into it instantaneously. Same as his plane example with depressurization. Go on, whoever that was.
Yeah, so in his plane example, that's why you have another small container that pops down from above your head so you can keep breathing. Yeah, that was just piped through a piped container directly to you to the face mask. So that if gas pressure is lost within the cabin, you can still breathe via another direct container to your face.
Right.
But in all of this, you see, he's doing what they do, which is to state the truth, without mentioning the lack of containment when he's going to get up to his Kármán line. But he's giving you multiple examples where containment is the necessary antecedent. So it's going to be interesting to see how he gets past that when he applies it to a ball Earth.
Well, I think he's already done it. That's why I made the objection earlier and contradicted QE. I'm glad I did, which is to say that by way of saying atmosphere, he has already begged the question, hasn't he? So he may not actually get to the point where he makes any juxtaposition or connection between these examples that do have containment and he's already assumed sphere-shaped air.
Right. So you breathe through the mask. That's all. Okay? By the way, you could hold your breath until you did this. I mean...
Why? Because you've got lungs that can withstand the pressure, the entropy. Yeah, those are containers also, aren't they?
This is not, you're not going to die immediately. You have to fight for them. It's just air, okay?
Right.
You've held breath holding contests for longer than the time it'll take you to reach for one of these yellow masks.
Little cups, right? And remember, people, always put your own mask on first before you try to put the mask on that of a child. So,
Well,
which, by the way, no one
somebody's
had
been paying attention on the flight, haven't they?
Somebody what?
Somebody's been paying attention when they've been on an aeroplane. I mean, very few people do listen to the stewards, but I mean, that pearl of wisdom from, is it Chuck there? Chuckles? Is that in sharing his vast knowledge? Make sure you put your own mask on before you save your child.
Yeah, I don't know why he's giving us that advice, but there we go.
He's just being a joker. Next thing he'll say is move your trays back into their original position.
to tell me, okay? Like when I heard that, I was just like, and what else would I have done? Okay.
Well, what else would you have done? Put the child's mask on first, and in faffing around, you might pass out before you get it on the kid.
Chuck was first out of the box on that one.
Exactly. I was like, this kid ain't bringing nothing to the table. Really?
No, I can't believe we're having to comment on this. It's contrary to your own survival instinct, because your survival instinct tells you to protect your kids first. Yeah? That's what will kick in. Make sure that they're safe. So you'll instinctually go to protect them before yourself. Or at least that's how I would behave with my kids. I'd put them first. Now, contrary to that, if you've got a situation where you might suffer hypoxia, then it's a good idea to get your mask on first so that you don't suffer the effects of hypoxia, because your kids ain't going to get your mask on if you do. That's the reason why you do yours first, contrary to your instincts.
I might just let the kid pass out just so I can get some rest.
Yeah, that's the point. You might want to let the kid suffer a minor amount of hypoxia while you're struggling to get your mask on, because you can immediately resolve that problem so long as you've got a mask on. If you're faffing around trying to get your kid's mask on and then everybody around you suffers hypoxia because there's no air to breathe, then you're all screwed if you've all been faffing around trying to get kids' masks on. Anyway.
Oh, that was the noisy kid. You're not giving him the oxygen.
Exactly. Wait, let's not be so quick there, Mom. That kid is looking real peaceful right now.
Meanwhile, outer space, the sky vacuum, the very premise that a heliocentric model, that's an Earth in space moving around the sun, is entirely debunked by what these two chuckling clowns are laughing about. That's gas pressure. Gas fills space. It's law of nature. So if we had a high-pressure gas next to a vacuum, number one, it's farcical because it would never have developed in the first place. But if it was, as they suggest, it would immediately vacate. Like I say, it's a ludicrous notion to say that something without containment would have to breach its non-containment to disperse into a sky vacuum. As I say, we would have never developed gas pressure. The very, very, very first gas particle to come out of the ground, or to be developed by any sort of vegetation, would come out of the ground, go into the area of volume in whatever vector it's travelling, and never collide with anything. That is to say, it would go in that direction indefinitely, into a sky vacuum. What about the second gas particle? Yeah, that would do the same. Come out of the ground in whatever vector it's travelling and keep going. To never return. And every subsequent gas particle that the Earth ever produced, ever, would do the same thing. The gas would come out of the ground and vacate into space instantly. Hence, if the sky was a vacuum, we would be at 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum at sea level. That is to say, there would be no gas here. It is utterly absurd, and your heliocentric priests just have a chuckle about whether or not they'll allow a child to die of hypoxia on a plane. That's what your fundy priest chuckles about, while we debunk the notion that space is even real. What a stark contrast.
All right. That's cold. All right. Oh, by the way, it's also literally cold as you leave Earth's surface because you're farther away from the heat point of the heat generating point, which is
sorry. As you leave Earth's surface and get closer to the sun, the biggest entropy generator there is, you're going to say we're moving away from a heat source. Is that correct? No, as far as I'm concerned, if I'm going to consider the sun a heat source, an entropic generator, then as I approach it, I'm going to suggest that I'm going to experience a greater degree of heat. That's my understanding of how it works in terms of the second law of thermodynamics. Likewise, if I back away from the sun, I'd expect it to get cooler.
That's another... Scratch that. That's
Whole another explainer.
Scratch that. Why? What's the heat source? You think Earth's core is the heat source? What core would that be?
Okay, so as you ascend, the air just simply gets thinner and thinner and thinner. Okay. There is no spot where you say it ends here and it's space. No, there isn't.
So what's the Kármán line? It's just an arbitrary way of you ascribing volume to a containerless system. Wow, that's loud. It's obviously a bit quieter on Neil deGrasse Tyson's video than usual. Any comments?
So you just have to agree on what that altitude will be.
No, I don't. What I say is, if the sky was a vacuum, we'd never achieve gas pressure. So the first particle would come out of the ground and vacate into space to never return. And that would be the case with every subsequent gas particle ever produced in a heliocentric sky vacuum-based Earth as a sphere moving around the sun. Further to that, the sun wouldn't exist, because it's supposed to be a burning ball of gas in a sky vacuum. So entropy would dictate that it's definitely not a burning ball of gas, because gas fills space also. Same goes for every description of every planet you claim is a gas. Giant. Well, gases fill space.
Pick a thing, and then just, you good with that? I'm good with that? Fine. Put it in the books. Move on to the next problem.
Okay, so entropy, gas dispersion, gas filling availability of volume. We'll put it out in the book, close it, slap it, and move on. Okay, bye-bye, Jupiter. Your description in a heliocentric world isn't valid anymore. We understand how gas behaves. It would immediately disperse into the sky vacuum.
Problem. Okay.
Okay.
So there's a guy in the 1960s named Kármán. Okay? Right. He was a Hungarian, I think, but worked in the United States. And he said there must be an altitude above which the atmosphere is no longer scattering sunlight above your head so that it's no longer sky blue. The blue goes away and then you just see stars.
As does your description of why the sky is blue, given that we can debunk your aspects of a heliocentric system with a distant sun and a sphere-shaped air not dispersing into a sky vacuum, leaving me with the very first question I asked myself when I found out the Earth was flat. Why is the sky blue? Now, nobody on this panel is going to give me an answer to that question, Neil. But your scattering descriptions up shit creek with a paddle, my friend. Completely useless.
In broad daylight.
Oh, wow.
That's an interesting threshold, right?
That is.
And that's fair. There'll still be air molecules there, just not enough to scatter, because that's how you get a blue sky. It scatters the blue of sunlight, and now the sky is glowing and you can't see the night sky. You can't see stars in the daytime sky. Gotcha. So, because it's daytime. However, if you ascend high enough in the atmosphere, there's a point where there aren't many molecules above you. Bada bing, the sun is still there, but you can see stars in addition to our own star.
Really? See, why is it that we get conflicting evidence from astronauts in this regard then? So that claim, coming from Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's presumably never taken this journey to make this as a personal observation, would have to reference somebody in this regard, and there's conflicting accounts.
In the sky. So that's called the Kármán line. And ever since the early 60s, the Kármán line has been the functional definition of a transition into space, whether or not you were in Earth orbit.
Yeah, meanwhile, space would be an availability of space for the gas to fill. So gas would fill it. It's entropic law. It's the second law of thermodynamics, it's dispersion. That's how gas behaves. So there is no arbitrary point. There is no Kármán line. There is no space. If the sky was a vacuum, the gas we breathe would fill that availability of volume in line with entropic law.
Interesting.
Our first astronaut, Alan Shepard, went up in 1961. He went into low. He went to suborbital, was fished out of the Atlantic, okay, and he went high enough to go above the Kármán line. So that counted, and so that's sort of our astronaut.
Did he need a container for the gas that he was breathing? Oh, my bad. It was because it was so thin up there. All right. So he needs to contain the gas in his suit or ship, but the gas that's traversed beyond the Kármán line, that's not continuing on in whatever vector it's travelling in. Just stops, just eats a few cakes, falls down, go boom boom.
Astronaut threshold. Kármán himself, however, knew that the atmosphere is not some rigid thing, it's gas.
Right.
And sometimes it heats up, sometimes it cools down. So
But it always disperses, without exception.
Will expand.
Yeah, we mentioned this earlier, Nathan, and with the sulfur hexafluoride. And I said to you, the thing that's stopping all that sulfur hexafluoride escaping or diffusing instantly is the other air molecules that are in the way. Now, if we take that analogy to his Kármán line, there is nothing to stop the diffusion. Yet he's claiming, because there's less molecules, less disappear. It's a complete contradiction to gas behaviour, what he's doing. There's nothing to impede that gas molecule from its last collision. And if that collision is away from the surface, there's nothing will stop it. It'll just keep going on the last vector it was travelling until it has another collision. If you go to space, and I think in there we worked this out years ago, didn't we? It's something like when you get to the Tor value of space, there's something like 6 molecules in a cubic meter. Considering how small they are, even if there was 6,000 to travel through that cubic meter, there's very little chance of a collision occurring. And that's what he's describing. And then the opposite, it's kind of claiming the opposite effect from what he's describing.
Exactly.
Shrink. And so the Kármán line is not itself a definite thing. But if you're going to look for it, you'd find it anywhere between 80, 85, and...
Again, total doublespeak. It doesn't really exist. It's completely arbitrary. But if you were to look for it... What? So unicorns aren't real. They don't really exist. But if you were to look for them, they'd be somewhere between... What the hell are you babbling about? You've just told us how arbitrary this is, but now you're telling us where we can find it.
No. Go back to the beginning of the show. What did he say? I can't quite measure it, but it's somewhere between. With his tabletop
yeah, of course. When I wasn't quite following along. Yes, well done, Adam.
Kilometers. Okay, that would convert to 53 to 62 miles up. Somewhere in there.
So it's just like kind of like one, maybe half a table. Somewhere in that ballpark. Got you, Adam, got you.
Okay, and so to say, did you hit this exact point or not? That's like arguing, which
about whether or not there's an edge to the table. Right.
Edge of the table are you using to give me the length of the table? Except worse because it's gas.
Yeah, because gas fills space. So regardless of where you define this arbitrary position where gas suddenly doesn't behave in the way it behaves everywhere else, doesn't make any difference to the fact that it's completely arbitrary. You're never going to find it. Just doesn't matter if you say, well, as a general idea of where we say the sky isn't blue anymore because of a scattering effect in a heliocentric model with atmosphere not filling space, it's roughly between this and this. Can we all agree on that scale? Yeah, we can move forward now. Now we got gas in a sphere shape not filling a vacuum. At roughly this height, maybe that height, but it gets thinner.
You see the okey doke here. We got something physical like a table, which you better have a good way of measuring if you want to get through your front door. And then he wants to use that with gases.
He says, Retro Bill says, thanks, Neil, for taking the time to do yet another Flat Earth debate response video. Thanks for the super chat. Really appreciate the support, Retro Bill. Where are we in terms of live? We've been live for about 100. Okay, so 102 people watching. I think we'll carry on this in the after show. Waits for
No,
objections.
don't do it.
No, keep it going live.
I've only got 100 people watching. People aren't so keen on live sharing this live, so you know.
Okay, set a challenge. 15 more people in the next 10 minutes at least.
We'll do 5 more minutes. If we can get up to 120 people, we're at 105 now. Then I'll continue to the end of this video with Neil deGrasse Tyson. 5 more minutes to share the show.
Right.
So, point is, the atmosphere continues out for thousands of miles.
Oh no.
Yeah. In fact,
it would continue on forever. Because gas fills space. It's entropy. It's the law of nature. We'd have none of it to breathe because every single gas particle would vacate the space that it's currently occupying in your arbitrary position in sphere-shaped air below the Kármán line. It would all disperse into the availability of volume. It's a law of nature.
Ow!
The International Space Station, which is 250 miles up.
Right.
How much higher?
He has no idea how high the International Space Station is, because what they call the International Space Station is just a light in the sky. What they have claimed that light in the sky is clearly fake. Taking place on a stage, here on Earth, definitely not moving at 17,000 miles per hour in an orbital presupposition. Definitely not falling around a sphere-shaped Earth in an orbital motion. Definitely not in a sky vacuum looking back on gas not dispersing into the vacuum. In a tin can that needs to have high pressure gas contained within it, while it looks down on a non-contained system of gas pressure in violation of natural law. It's total nonsense. This 250-mile nonsense, yeah, it's just made it up.
Then the 62-mile Kármán line it's 4 times higher than the Kármán line. The International Space Station is
He's looking down on a second law of thermodynamics violation. That's right.
Huge. It's like the size of a football field.
No, it isn't. Your scaling values that you may have applied through Kepler's third law of interplanetary motion to roughly how much you think it should scale in a heliocentric model doesn't mean that light in the sky is A, falling around a sphere Earth, B, 250 miles high based on your R value and your assumptions in terms of your scale, or C, has men on high wire dangling around, which are actually on a stage, up in a sky vacuum. They are not looking down on high pressure gas not expanding into space. That violates the second law of thermodynamics.
Moving through the air. There's enough atmospheric molecules up there to hit the solar panels and the physical body to drop it to lower orbits than you had originally intended. So every now and then the space station has to boost itself up back to its original target orbit because of the air molecules that hit it.
All of them would hit it. We'd have no gas to breathe if the sky was a vacuum. Yeah? If beyond the space station, it's 10 to the minus 17 torr, the black area in all of the pictures of Earth from space, there's a black area next to high pressure gas. Well, all of it would dissipate instantly. We'd have never achieved gas pressure on Earth in their model. Ever. Couldn't be done.
Nathan, in what direction in his little fairy tale would the gas molecules have to hit it in order to boost it up again?
That was what I was going to say, Tam. Where are the gas molecules? What direction or vector of force, as minute as it is the gas molecules applying to the station? If it could hit it, it would be pushing it, applying force away from the surface, because that's the direction of travel of the molecule. If I punch you in the face, you go backwards. You don't come forwards, do you?
No, you'd need a boost further forwards into your fist, according to Neil deGrasse Tyson's logic.
Yeah, exactly.
That's insane.
Yes.
You do.
In what? Sorry, John?
In glove jitsu, you do go forward.
Oh, ball jitsu. Yeah, this is akin to ball jitsu.
And that's 250 miles up. So
yeah, you stress that nonsense.
There's no edge. And if you're going to ask me, what is the diameter of the sun?
Edge? It's not that you need edge for your gas pressure. You need a container. Yeah. Your system, sphere Earth in a sky vacuum moving around the sun, doesn't have a container. It does have vast speeds that would leave the gas pressure for dust because it's not attached to Earth with Velcro. So given that you've got the Earth moving at a vast speed around the sun and the sun moving at a vast speed around a great attractor, you'd have the gas left where it was. Earth would move on past its own gas pressure instantly, based on the rates of speed you have it moving in the solar system. Because gas isn't bonded to Earth. It's completely free to move wherever it's moving. And if Earth happens to move along underneath it, it's not going to go, whoa, 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 hold on there, Earth. I'm going to track along with you around the sun. So that's a nonsense. Gas just fills space instantly. Earth would have no gas pressure if it was heliocentric.
Son, you could look this up in a book. You could look this up. The diameter of the sun, it'll give it to you. And you say, well, wait a minute. The sun is made of gas. So how precisely are you measuring? Did you take a ruler and do that?
No, because the sun also violates the second law of thermodynamics, being made of gas, as I pointed out earlier. Yeah, your sun would disperse if it was a gas. Yeah, same with all the planets that you claim are gas. Yeah, gas doesn't coalesce to form balls. Like Jupiter.
Hold on. The sun's not a gas in the heliocentric balltard.
Plasma, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a perpetual explosion.
Okay. It's getting nitpicky in their model. No, you're right. It's claimed to be a plasma.
Yeah. Yeah. How can it, if it was a gas? He's so ass backwards. It's a gas. Then how can it give a continuous spectra? It's gas, Neil. He doesn't know the basic fundamentals of what things are not in his own fairy tale religion.
Yeah, but can you really blame them, though, John? I mean, the narrative is now more quickly changing on a regular basis. So, yeah, you're going to get some things wrong eventually, you know, when they keep changing things around so much.
Well,
now, John,
you'd expect to get the complicated things wrong, but not what the sun is made of in the heliocentric balltard. OMG, man.
But why? Why would the sun be an exemption and details wouldn't be? When they're literally changing the entire story of the core of Earth.
It wouldn't be an exemption. It would be an exception. I'll raise my voice too.
I think the point is, Arwin, that it's the heliocentric model. Sun at center. The sun is the most important thing in their model. The Earth is secondary and bowing down to it. So in terms of what the sun is and what it's made of, I would say that that's pretty crucial to their claim of us moving around it, given the name of the model is based on it.
I get that. But the thing is, it keeps changing. So at some point, somebody started to decide, oh, now it has a black body in there. And then everybody goes on with that, even though it contradicts any logic. And it'll keep going. It's a Ponzi scheme of
there's no murder scene.
More
hold on.
on top of
Just get that clear. There is no murder scene. There's no black bodies in the sun. Is a black body, as opposed to has a black body in it.
There is no sun. It doesn't have a position in order to have something in it. So it's just something we see up there when we look. That's all.
Just outside of that, Huey jumped in there. Can you just expand on emission spectra, John? Why that is so destroying? Which why they've got to claim plasma, even though he hasn't claimed plasma, he's claimed gas. Maybe Huey could just summarise that. What emission spectra of, if you're going to get a full emission spectra, what's required?
Yeah, to get a full emission spectra, you either have to have a solid or a plasma in a container. By the way, you can't have plasma without a container either.
Keyword container, right?
No, the key word is emission spectra in this case. The sun is emitting a full spectra.
Yeah.
Right, but is it a gas though? Is it a gas?
Can anybody else hear QE? Hello? It's the third time he's been asked to expand on this by Adam. And every time we've got Neil, now we've got Arwin. Can you just answer? Go ahead, QE. Third time's a charm.
So solids and plasmas in a container are the only materials that can emit continuous spectra. Gases, remember our key learning objectives. Gases only emit and absorb in bands. Period. Thank you very much. I'll be in the area all week.
Thank you.
I said one thing the whole freaking show, and you're going to cop on me?
Yeah, because it's at the most crucial detail where we're getting an expansion on a really key point, in this case, emission spectra.
Stop talking. I didn't interrupt him. He stopped.
Yeah.
That was a good point, Neil, but you grasped the wrong point. I'm not having a dig there, dude. Yeah? The key point here isn't the containment, unless you're going to focus on how you can have plasma in space. Yeah? The key point is the emission spectra. And what Neil deGrasse Tyson is claiming the sun is made of, which is in sole contradiction as to gases and what light they can emit. It's an absorption band they emit, isn't it? What they absorb, they kick it out at their frequency. They don't give a full spectrum of light. That only comes from solids or plasma if it's contained. Or plasma. And to have plasma, you have to have containment.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm saying.
So
We can't have any of this without containment, right?
So based on the data, they want to manipulate the narrative to it has to be a gas lamp because that's like the plasma, because that's the readings that come from it. Because when I grew up, they told me, no, it's actually just a perpetual explosion. There's no electrified gas lamp. That's not what it is. It's an explosion. So then it kind of changed around, I guess, and now it's changing some more. So again, yeah, they completely overhaul the very foundation of the entire thing in plain sight. They did it with the molten iron core, and they're doing it with the sun, and it keeps happening. You shouldn't be surprised at this point.
Right, well, we've got a super chat from Retro Bill, who says, "More live show!" ! Oh, I was just about to round out. Check it out. I've got my camera on and everything. I was just about to do an outro and go, well, with 119 people watching, we're not going to continue. But as it turns out, there is actually now 122 people watching. So I'm going to continue the live show, true to my word. I was literally just about to round out, though. So, okay, well, thank you very much, everyone who shared the show. Really, really appreciate it. Please continue to share the show, because I'm going to stay live for a little bit longer, and we'll get to the end of this Neil deGrasse Tyson. Because literally within 1 second of me about to press the outro button, you got 222 people watching. Amazing.
Let's continue.
That means we've got to thank Neil, doesn't it, for all that? Neil's interruptions got us to well done, Neil.
Well done, Neil.
Interruption, singular.
You can say, in what wavelength of light did you measure the diameter of the sun? Do you know different wavelengths of light emanate from different locations within the depth of the sun? If you
within the depth of that's go ahead, Armin. You got to the objection first. I'll cue up the super chat.
The what? Different types of light from different positions in the sun?
Depths.
How is that supposed to work?
He said depths, different depths of the sun.
Yeah, different layers, like deeper in, and then different types of light come from the deeper layer in through the other layers. Like what? This is sounding very fruity to me.
It just sounds like nonsense.
Wouldn't the other layers absorb the light and then just give an emission spectra?
Maybe the sun is actually just an onion of light. Different layers.
Say that again, Adam.
I said if you're having emission, full spectral emission from lower layers, that's going to then go through a gas layer. That gas layer would absorb the light and then just emit an emission spectra.
It depends. That gas layer better be cool and have the ability to raise its... You follow?
Yes. So the final bit for the gas to do that. Yeah.
Hold on. Did you just say it has to be cooler? Because their descriptions...
The gas...
Well, that also contradicts their descriptions of how the sun behaves, because they have it... Yeah. Another second law of thermodynamics violation. They have it increasing in temperature, do they not? As you get further away.
Yes. All yeses.
I mean, it's second law of thermodynamics violation after second law of thermodynamics violation when it comes to the sun in a sky vacuum.
Yes. Well, they're treating it like it's a microwave, right? So the sun itself is supposedly less hot than right outside of it, like there is a microwave radiation situation.
Yeah, exactly. I remember QE's example is, so I'm going to steal it and just give it on his behalf, right? So it's akin to you going up to a bonfire. Now I've got to start the example slightly differently. You're standing by a bonfire, and it's quite hot. You go, whoa, bloody hell, the heat of this bonfire is immense. I'm going to walk back 25 feet. So you walk back 25 feet, and as you get back to the 25 feet mark, you spontaneously combust because it's much, much hotter.
Right.
Right, a couple of quick shout-outs. Sorry, just a quick couple of shout-outs to Uncle Ben. and Skeptic936, who essentially were saying overtime, and thanks for doing the extra bit of live show. Well, I'm glad you appreciate it. I'm glad there's loads of people watching.
What's up, Skep?
But how can that even work, where it's hotter outside of a burning situation when it's claimed still that it's basically combustion, right? The sun. It's not being electrified gas, because when things get electrified, I can imagine that, just like with a microwave or whatever, there might be some heat somewhere else or something, right? But that's electrical. So I didn't think that the sun was electrical. I mean, there's the electric universe theorists and all that, but that's not part of the standard lingo.
No,
right?
But
part of the story.
What is as you get further away from it, the thermal output increases. That's their description, not ours. It's nonsense, but that's what they describe for the sun.
Yeah, but why though?
I don't know, Arwin. Don't ask me why they like to piss in people's faces with second law of thermodynamics violations. It makes no sense to me.
It doesn't have to do with like comets being visible, that you see the tail of them because they're in that distance to the sun where they get cooked.
Maybe.
So is that it?
Maybe. Go ahead, 10th. Did you want to summarize?
Yeah. Well, you remember how he started, which was agreed upon how gas works. And then now we're in debating the question of outer space, which violates the second law of thermodynamics, entropy. So now we're in full Narnia world, space pseudo world, where they're making up stuff. Why are we even amazed?
I'm not amazed. I just want to figure out the roots, like the logic behind it. I don't like it when ballers or wizards out there just say, oh, this is just it, and they don't explain why, right? It's very frustrating.
I agree with you, Arwin. There has to be a reason for them to nonsense speak again, to contradict again. Like you say, it's hotter if I step back from the fire. There has to be a reason in their theory, as to that is required. There has to be a justification, a need for it in their model.
Well,
it's the non-existing tilt of the Earth when it's supposed to be hotter, but it's cooler.
Sure, but what we're saying is, in terms of how the sun, its close proximity, that's what we're describing, has a second law of thermodynamics violation. That is to say, the thermal output increases as you get further away from it. As you step away from the surface of the sun, they claim that it's getting hotter. So just I can't remember how they describe it to give it justice. But the point here is, if that's the case, which it is, why is that the case? What overcome is that serving? What argument has someone put forth that someone's necessitated that description to overcome the objection? There must be a reason, we just don't know what it is. Answers on a postcode to P.O. Box I Don't Give a Shit, Heliocentric Road.
Right, because it's not about something that's measured, right? Because it's literally part of the fictional part of the cosmology outside of the Earth. So it's complete fiction. So why would they make that claim? You see, that's the issue. Why would they say it? Why did just not never address anything about it? Why did they claim?
Maybe you'll Google it, or this segue will last forever. Who knows? One will come first.
Same way people make claims like this from chat. So gas does not settle down because of the combination of gravity, kinetic energy, diffusion, pressure, and temperature. That's what Pendekar 1144 says. I asked him to come on the show.
If you're like Geordi on Star Trek Next Generations, and you look at the sun in ultraviolet light, it has a different dimension from what it has if you look at it in visible light and if you look at it in infrared light. Then if you look at it in X-rays, all different dimensions. In fact, the solar corona, the thing that's glowing outside of the moon when you see a total solar eclipse, that's called the corona, which is Latin for crown, so sensibly, right? So if you looked at that with X-rays, that's the size of the sun.
That's the thing that they say is hotter. So they say the solar corona is hotter than the surface.
Forget the down on the sun's surface, gaseous surface. X-rays, the corona is ablaze with light.
Get out of here.
Yeah, man, surface tensions of gas. Come on, it's a fluid. Just think of it that it can have a surface, damn it.
That's a good example of the double speak he's doing. Me, Kiwi, and Arwen all buttered straight there as soon as he said that line. How many layman's pick up on that?
You want to hear it again?
Nobody. We're special.
You are special.
No, I just didn't want to interrupt again.
That's the size of the sun. Forget the down on the sun's surface, gaseous surface. X-rays, the corona is ablaze with light. And you're going to say the sun is huge. So I just want to put it out there that the dimensions of things is really just something you just have to agree to in advance.
No, you scale it with Kepler.
Wow.
Go on. Who wants to give the summary? I heard Adam first, I believe. Go on.
I just wanted to say, wow, we have to agree on what it is first before we can figure out what it is. Like, what?
I'm not getting the connection between his premise and the conclusion. What was the premise here?
Atmosphere, sphere-shaped air.
And conclusion?
That you can have a Kármán line. It's roughly between this distance and that distance, as long as we agree on the scales.
No, I'm talking about why are we here? This is so convoluted. We're on the sun.
Okay.
Is there a Kármán line on the sun?
No.
Yes, it's where the surface of the gas starts, QE.
No, he's making the example to say, look, how big is the sun? If we're going to say how big are the gases that reach the extremities of a sphere-shaped Earth with a sphere-shaped gas that isn't dispersing, but does kind of disperse because it gets thinner and thinner, but still sticks around. Okay, but if you compare that to the sun and you look at all the different wavelengths of light that come from the sun in his examples, then the sun is all sorts of different sizes. Likewise, the gas that goes out to the quote-unquote Kármán line isn't really the edge, because that's what the video's about. Tyson explains the edge of Earth. We're talking about the edge of gas pressure.
No, I'm sorry. That's incoherent gibberish.
But that's what we got.
He's trying to... He did this in the previous video, isn't he? He's sticking by that claim that the edge of the atmosphere or the beginning of space, by his definition, isn't the Kármán line. It's when there's not sufficient molecules to, even in daylight, to create illumination of the atmosphere. That's the point where the molecular concentration of the gas particles is so low. He classifies it as space.
There you go.
I'm not getting it.
Yeah, it's very convoluted, but most of Neil deGrasse Tyson's stuff isn't good enough to put on Comedy Central with him dropping microphones or holding beach balls and slapping them. Most of them are pretty crappy.
I'm not getting it. It's pointless. Pointless, incoherent gibberish to me up to this point.
Right. Well, this is the problem when, you meet your heroes. He's on a crappy channel of his own that he's just putting out these crappy examples. They're not all the masterful examples of Coriolis deflection. Metaphorical deflection as in him deflecting the subject, not the deflection itself that we don't experience. Or his examples of not seeing a reified geometric sphere edge horizon because you're only 2 millimeters above this beach ball. That stuff is flat. Those are his good magic tricks. These are the crap ones.
I like this. Sorry. I like this, Nathan. This is a man that I assume his core degree was physics-based before he went off to his PhDs and stuff. And what he's demonstrating here to me is how all of his beliefs in the heliocentric model contradict the basic physics that he will have learned at uni. Yeah? And that's just all we've gone through. All we're doing is pointing out the sheer contradictions to the natural law and the known physics. And I'm quite happy with this, QE. This to me is very productive because it shows how much he contradicts himself just to hold his model together.
And then you all agree, you put it in the book, and then you move on. So the diameter of the sun is the diameter it shows to us using yellow light, which is right in the middle of the visible spectrum.
That's not the diameter of the sun. That's the apparent size of the sun through the visible spectrum that you observe with your eye. But that's not the diameter. That's the apparent size.
That's the number you're going to read in the book. But they don't tell you that, but I'm telling you that.
I'm glad you did, because it's good to know they've been lying to me all the time.
Wait.
Oh, by the way, and you
wait.
Wow.
Now that was in response to, hey, listen, we just all have to agree, put it in the book, and move on, because it's an agreed upon convention that's based on pseudoscience and begging the question. And then Chuck goes, they've been lying to me all the time.
Yeah, and then he had to do his Santa laugh to still get sympathy while he was basically laughing over, lying,
You can think of other definitions of space. I got one for you. You ready?
Oh, wow.
Oh, I can't wait for this.
Yeah.
So airplanes use fuel. It's called aviation fuel. There's a word for it.
What? He's about to define space and he's starting with airplanes. What's the problem?
Forgot what. But anyway, it uses fuel. So fuel, our common understanding of fuel is you burn it and then you get energy. But what does it mean to burn it? It means it gets attached to the oxygen molecule, creates a third other product, right? There's that molecule, the oxygen molecule, they merge and make this other molecule, and it's exothermic. Energy gets generated. Okay.
Oh, that sounds sciencey.
Yeah, I used to say it wrong. I used to describe anything that's generating heat as exothermic, which isn't necessarily the case. It's only when there's a chemical reaction, right?
I wouldn't pick on you. I'd pick on him for saying burning instead of combustion, was specifically when he's relating it to mixing with oxygen. It's highly ignorant.
Yeah. And do you need oxygen to have something oxidized?
No, you can just lose it.
And you need a stable, pressured environment too.
Hold on a second. Now that sounds wrong. You said, do you need oxygen to make something oxidize? And you both said no.
Yeah,
exactly.
So does it when something's oxidizing, is it because it's having a chemical reaction with the oxygen it contains within its own substance? What's going on?
Well, oxidizing can be both. Oxidizing technically is another process where it's like rust. So there's just a direct chemical reaction.
Sure, but
it's different from burning.
But it's combining with the oxygen.
No, that's a combustion reaction, which you can describe the resultant product as a iron oxide. So that could be an oxidation with oxygen, but you don't have to have oxygen for oxidation chemistry.
I still don't understand.
You can have electron. So your oxidation and reduction can be the gain or loss of electrons. So you can describe it like that.
Oh,
yeah. Redox reactions. We don't need to get into it. We're on Neil deGrasse Tyson, who can't tie his shoes yet.
Fine. We'll explore my own ignorance later.
Cars work.
Yeah.
That's how airplanes work. But where's it getting its oxygen from? The atmosphere. Okay? Wait a minute. But if you're a rocket and you're going to where there is no oxygen, where there's not much oxygen, you got to bring your own oxidizer. You can't depend on the atmosphere.
This is him telling us what space is, by the way, just to remind you.
No, I'm trying to figure that out.
You also need pressure, though. You just having an oxidizer agent, right? Like shining a laser on thermite, which definitely has oxygen in it, right? In a vacuum chamber. Oh, guess what? It didn't work. It's been demonstrated. It doesn't work. You also need stable pressure for that to work.
Yeah, it's regardless of that.
Yeah,
he hasn't defined space.
Yeah, exactly. Arwin's fallen victim to the trap, right? Now, other flat earthers, take heed of Arwin's mistake. Please don't pipe up just for a minute, Arwin. Right? You're a great example. Right. So what Arwin's done is allowed the question to be begged of space being real, and then gone to whether or not thermite, in his example, will burn in a vacuum. Which vacuum would that be, Arwin?
No, not any presumed to be vacuum, just you need pressure. It was just a general statement. You actually need gas pressure in order for that reaction to happen.
That's not going to work on me. So without it being attached to any claim of Earth or sky, it's just kind of folly then, really. It's just off the cuff remark about nothing then.
Yeah.
It's a weird one, this, though, isn't it? Because he's going to claim there's not sufficient oxygen, which is why when you have gas, when you have rockets in space, you have to take your own oxygen to mix the two to get the combustion. I think that's what he's going to get to, that you've got to take your own oxygen to get the rocket thrust in space, because there isn't anything.
Let me try this a different way.
The fuel you just take
Adam,
up, you naturally
you're right.
with.
I just want to make my point clear, though. as right as you are, I'm sorry. Okay, so we're going to use a slightly different example. Instead of an oxidizer, right, we're going to slightly mix it up and say, we're going to use a thermal insulator. It's a juxtaposition, a comparison in my example. Now, the thermal insulator, we're going to call a coat. Okay? And the space, that's outer space, sky vacuum, we're going to replace that with Narnia. Okie dokie. So when we go to Narnia, you need to bring your own coat. So, as an audience member, you've got a couple of choices. Do we argue about the validity of the necessity for a coat going to Narnia? Or do we point out that space is fake? Which do you think is the most logical route to take here?
There's so many holes in what he's saying in terms of rockets, how they work in space, if they could even get propulsion. The simplest way is obvious. The most short route is to just take it to the claim of space, which is a violation. There's no need to then discuss what you're burning, how it would create propulsion or anything. Just point out it's a second law of thermodynamics violation that he's claiming that all of these things are happening in.
Yeah, it's so convoluted. He's so wrong on so many points. He's already into oxygen. They wouldn't need to take oxygen, right? Oxygen isn't required. Back to the point. I don't want to get back to the redox actions. Let's just move on. Can we get to space?
So you could say you enter space at an altitude where an airplane can't get enough oxygen to fly anymore, and it just drops out of the sky. That's an interesting threshold. You could have done it that.
See the pitch of his voice. Shout out to Kenny for joining as a penguin. The pitching of his voice is because he knows he's bullshitting. He's just making this shit up. That's why he's put the upward inflection in his voice.
They'll wait for the definition of space out here.
Right.
That way. Because above that, you need a rocket. And we all know rockets equal space. Okay.
Yeah. In your bullshit, that's how it works. To your average General Joe member of the public, rockets equal space.
Wait a second. Rockets equal space?
Well, you wanted it. You got it. That was it at the end. All the other surplus to requirements, every bit of the nonsense that came pre that statement, i.e., rockets equal space. Yeah, that's basically it.
What? So if I go define space, if I look up space in the contradictionary, it's going to say rockets?
Yes. Correct. Correctamundo.
No, it's airplanes don't take air with them. They use air for their wings and the Bernoulli effect. But once you go higher, rockets equal space.
Yeah, that's his argument. Correct.
Okay.
There you go.
I can think of 10 other ways you might define it. But I'm just saying.
Meanwhile, outer space is 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum. And 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum is a low pressure system. And we have a high pressure system of gas that we're all breathing. Well, no. Simple as that. No, we don't have a high pressure system above our heads in the form of a sky vacuum. We'd all be dead. Because the high pressure would want to go into it.
I'm going to define water. Ready? Fish.
Hey, he said it at the beginning. He defined gas pressure. You need a container.
Look, it's akin to Barbara or whatever her name was defining space-time as a table or a donut. You know, it's that sort of level of nonsense.
Just numbers and measurements of things are not, they're not written in tablets.
Samar, what are you talking about?
I'm a freaking pharmacist and I don't write in tablets.
Yeah, but there are quite possibly numbers written in tablet form. Like gravestones, they've got numbers on. What's he babbling about?
There, you have to agree on what it is you're trying to measure, write down that number, and then move on.
Okay, so if we debunk the number that's been used in a measurement, like your radius value and your AU measurement, then we can chuck it out by that standard.
No. As long as, no, because the point is made there is consensus at science again, isn't it? If we agree on it, we can move on.
Yeah, and if we don't agree, we can't move on.
No, because we've not got consensus science to be accurate.
Yeah, and I'm saying...
No such animal.
Yeah, there is no such animal as consensus science.
Oh, not in my world. There is in his world, isn't there? This is what he's describing. He's validating via the thing that makes it real is the fact that we all agree on it before we move forwards. And it is real because we've agreed on it.
Yeah, correct.
Adam, in your world, you actually have capsules.
Not space capsules, though. Just gelatin ones.
There you go. Measurements not written in tablets, only commandments.
All right, that's all we got time for.
All right.
Yeah, that's a crazy subject, but I have to put it out there.
No, that's very cool.
And when you hear people arguing over the Kármán line, just sit back and chuckle and say the Kármán line is an idea more than is an actual place within Earth's atmosphere.
Well, if I ever get into an argument about the Kármán line, my answer will be, so how big is the sun?
Yeah, you don't know because you're ascribing Kepler's third law of interplanetary motion and deriving that scale from an R value that you can't measure. So that's what I would answer. Shout out to Jamals24. He says, tisk, tisk, tisk. Where did you all go wrong? Who hurt you? Neil could not be any cleverer in his explanation. I think you all know what you need to do and how much time you need to do it. Is it 4 more hours? By any chance?
Hey, before we move on from consensus, it's a very good point. Even though he didn't explicitly say it, Adam was right. Implicitly, that's what he's going for here. According to Michael Crichton from Transcript Caltech, there is no such thing as consensus science. If it's consensus, it isn't science. If it's science, it isn't consensus. Period. Duh.
And with that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming Streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. Another massive thank you to today's Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either Premiering Stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
Submarine.
Oh, not seawater.
Oh, ocean is seawater.
No, seawater is a substance. Space is not a substance. It's a claim to be region.
Are submarines in seawater or not?
No.
Okay.
They're in the deep ocean. They equal deep
just seawater.
Seawater equals fish or crabs or whatever, but deep ocean equals submarine.
Oh wow!
Hey, speaking of deep ocean, speaking of deep ocean, Aaron, did you know? And 10th Man, that I didn't know this. Another thing that I heard Flatsoy say, that NASA, prior to Kennedy saying we need to get to space during this battle back and forth to this Narnia, they used to be an oceanologist type of underwater ocean studying committee. Is that true? Because then that explains why
Not
the
because it's
gargantuan
easy, because
Olympic
it's
pools.
hard.
An oceanaut. Yeah.
Oceanauts.
An oceanaut.
Does that explain the space bubbles that have been revealed and brought up to Faulkner?
No,
who
that's a swimming
tried to
pool.
act
That's
like-
a swimming pool. Swimming pool equals ISS.
Yeah, exactly. But that goes back to what they did prior to in the early years. Flatboy said that's what they studied, and one of their studies was trying to communicate with dolphins. They was an oceanologist or whatever you want to call them, oceanauts. And then when this whole thing came up with this fake Narnia going to the moon thing for whatever reason, whatever the motive was, then they started claiming this space voyage thing for the so-called Cold War, whatever.
Did Flatsoid tell us the poipus of the study?
The poipus?
That's a good
know
one, Ted. What's the poipus?
That was a good one. What was the poipus?
That was a whale of a one, boy.
That was another good one, Neil.
But I mean,
so is that the reason why they claim they got all the scuba diving equipment? Because they used to be oceanauts, and now they're lionauts?
No, it was before NASA was the way it was. There was a lot of deep ocean interest, exploration, and all that.
Yeah,
they're still there, but it seems like right before it, there was a lot of research in deep ocean stuff. Yes, Mariana Trench and all that, and then suddenly it was all about space.
That's interesting, though.
Well, they probably just needed some development of underwater equipment before they could use that to fool people into space, basically. Right? So they needed equipment and research for deep ocean situations in order to get the right equipment developed for the setup that they were going to use for space.
Yeah, because a normal person, if you have money, you could do some deep water exploration, right? But you can't, none of us can take a rocket and fly up there, right? I see why they changed.
Well, that's clearly the end of the show. So with that, I'll say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's very limited after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!